Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is part 1 of our story. If you like this what if story and want to see part 2, let me know in the comments below. Before we start, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this video with your friends. Also, check the description for more great content and my playlist. This story was posted by LoganKhusit on Wattpad. Now let's start. Izuku Midoriya looked at the walls that surround him for the 1000th time. No matter how many times he closes his eyes and wills them to disappear, they never do. They keep him away from his mom, his sensei, his friends, or those that would still stand by him, but most importantly they keep him away from his dream. A dream that Izuku feels is dying the longer he stays in Tartarus walls. Even if the memory is fleeting, he still remembers the events after the 𝐀𝐮𝐬𝐴 attack. He and his classmates barely survived. He was so emotional that most of it felt like a blur, but he can still pick out a few things. The police dragging him to Principal 𝐀𝐮𝐬𝐴's office, where he then is accused of being a spy to the recently named League of Villains in front of the UA staff, is the most prominent memory. That and his mentor and father figure's look of utter disappointment. That definitely hurt the most out of the entire event. Even having to give one for all to some third year named Mirio hurt less than the crushing gaze All Might had kept leveled on Izuku the entire time. Izuku hated it. Was his bond with his mentor and he dare say father not strong enough for him to see through 𝐀𝐮𝐬𝐴's judgment? Isn't a parent supposed to believe in their child no matter what, even if they do something wrong? Izuku had a lot of time to ponder that thought. The only good thing Izuku could think of which happened on that day was him not seeing his classmates' reactions. If he did, Izuku shivers that thought away. As the rest of his memories of the day are too clouded with emotion and tears, he brings himself back to the present and back on the white walls that still haunt him. Izuku's first days in Tartarus were. Being a hero in training and quirkless didn't help in any way. The only saving grace was that the guards don't allow fighting, so nobody has hurt him yet. However, that doesn't stop the other prisoners from whispering about him or straight up yelling insults. They didn't hurt Izuku as much as he expected. Guess he got used to it from 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫. After some time the prisoners got tired of Izuku's flinching after every insult and went back to their usual discussions they have in the brief period they are out of their cells. This presented Izuku, who usually sits in the corner of the cafeteria, an opportunity to learn about the people around him. And learn he did. From some of their names, to what they have done, quirks, backstory, and ideals. If anything, this affirmed to Izuku that the worst of the worst get locked up here and he should be anywhere but here. However, another thought crosses his mind when he listens to these villains tell tales of their deeds. Could have they been guided better? It's a hero's job to stop a villain, but what guides them to be villains? Was it their families? Their quirks? Or the thought that scared him the most when he first thought of it, was it the hero's fault these villains exist? Izuku held out his beliefs of heroes being just and righteous and that these villains are just slandering their names, yet the longer he stayed and listened the more that denial turned into sadness and then pity for the villains. If only he was strong enough to be a prominent figure in their lives to guide them, like a parent. His heart clenched thinking of that comparison, with his mind flashing to All Might briefly. The prisoner, however, didn't only talk about themselves but also of those who lay deeper inside Tartarus. Izuku was glad he wasn't one of those inmates, since the guards didn't perceive him as a threat since he's quirkless. Finally, my quirklessness actually helped me for once, he thought at the time. Some of the convicts in the deeper levels were absolute psychopaths, which makes Izuku remember that hand villain in the 𝐀𝐮𝐬𝐴. However, there is one that he remembers being talked about, if briefly, yet it stuck with him. Oh, what about that beauty? Which one? 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫. Oh, her. I've seen pictures of her when she was still a hero, and I got to say I would gladly let her kill me. You say that about every female hero, you pefly. Hey. She told me she was. Izuku stopped listening after that, yet his mind was buzzing to try and figure out if he ever wrote about a pro-hero named 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫. After several minutes his mind supplied his notes from one of his notebooks. What he had written for her was very brief, since by the time he learned of her she was already in jail, so he didn't focus too much on her. Izuku cursed himself in those moments for not trying to find more info, yet what he had was her quirk name, her hero name, and her crime that landed her in this hellhole. The crime of killing a fellow pro-hero is unforgivable, yet Izuku couldn't help but ask what pushed her to do it. If she was so violent that she would kill a pro hero, how did she become one in the first place? It didn't make sense for Izuku. It's inmates like Nagant that kept pushing the thoughts of a parent being there to guide these lost children to the forefront of Izuku's mind. It became a new dream of his if he ever got released from Tartarus. Although with what Izuku-sensei tells him it's not going to happen. Izuku-sensei was one thing that made staying in these white walls just a slight bit more bearable. Since the guards didn't seem to take Izuku as seriously as the other inmates, they allowed Izuku-sensei to tell his ex-student of what happens in the outside world. Whether that be who won the UA Sports Festival, which Izuku wasn't surprised about, to any classmates that got seriously hurt when fighting villains. Izuku tried to keep his wrongly accused student informed on all the matters he could. Yet that also means Izuku had to be informed about a piece of information that when Izuku delivered it, he saw his problem student's soul full of love and compassion leave his body during the duration of the message. Hello Izuku-sensei. It's good to see you again. Izuku couldn't help but feel happy when his sensei visits him in this personal hell of his. The same to you, problem child. Izuku says, yet Izuku sees Izuku's shoulders appear heavier than normal. Almost as if he's been carrying a large weight all the way to Izuku's cell. Izuku felt his stomach spin. I actually have something important to tell you, problem child. What is it? You've been proven innocent. The answer came so suddenly and after so long that Izuku didn't understand before it finally clicked. He let his face spread into a smile which hadn't been seen on his freckled face since he entered Tartarus. He is finally gonna see his mother again. He's going to see his friends again. He can finally start on his new dream of being there for those hurt by circumstance. Although that smile quickly began to fade when he saw Izuku-sensei's face of pain when seeing him happy. Did I do something wrong? The air stilled as silence descended on the hero and student. You're still not getting released. Izuku could have swore he heard a gunshot go off inside the room the two were having a conversation in. He looked at Izuku and saw something he only saw once before in Nisa's office. The light in Izuku's green eyes dim until his eyes almost look black. Even though you have been proven innocent, the Hero Commission can't be seen having this blunder, especially with how fragile the balance between heroes and villain has become after All Might retired recently. The public can't lose trust in heroes during this pivotal moment, they said. Demon bureaucrats. Izuku mutters that last part, but Izuku was busy being occupied with other thoughts at that moment. So many things bouncing around in his head that he doesn't even remember Izuku being taken out of his cell and him being alone once again with the white walls glaring down at him. It took a lot of time for Izuku to process everything, but when he did, the thought of taking 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫's advice crossed his mind. He shook it off at the time, for he is not so weak as to give up just like that. Besides, his childhood friend doesn't deserve his nickname anymore after what he hears from Izuku-sensei, and the fact his best friend's attitude is what pushed many of his new neighbors to be what they are today. It's after that day he started working on his body again, something he's been neglecting for a while now due to his delusion of being proven innocent and escaping. He listens in to the guards and prisoners alike talking about a new prisoner going to the lowest levels, with rumor being he fought All Might and caused him to retire. Such a villain scared Izuku even when he got used to living next to murderers. Someone like that shouldn't exist. All Might is the epitome of power. It's impossible for someone to be stronger. However, with that power you would be able to guide people on a better path. Izuku froze at that thought before nodding his head slowly. To everyone else seeing him, they thought he was finally losing it. With this recently incarcerated villain came the unexpected visit of his ex-mentor. It hurt to look at him, especially in his weakened form and in costume, but Izuku powered through. All Might didn't even apologize. All he did was look at Izuku with a blank look. Izuku hated it. He felt cast out once again by his supposed father figure. All Might then let out a sigh before doing something Izuku never thought All Might would do. He started to explain the story of One for All again, but what was different was that it was the whole story. Izuku learned of All for One, the name who was sent here recently, along with what he has done and what the previous users have tried to do in order to stop him. By the time All Might was finished with the retelling, Izuku only had one question. Why? Izuku almost didn't hear his own voice. It sounded gargled with saliva and tears. I felt you at least should know the full story of the quirk you possessed for a short time. Be honored you were able to pass the torch onto the next generation in the form of young Togata, young Midoriya. All Might seemed to be bored with the conversation, or was he just wanting to move on and get to the real reason on why he came to this prison? Izuku wouldn't know and didn't care as his already existing tears increased in speed with his fists starting to curl into fists. All Might took that opportunity to turn around and walk back to the door of the cell. Oh, one more thing, young Midoriya. I asked the guards to not record this conversation, so I would prefer you keep your mouth shut about our chat to these villains. Consider it as your duty as being the ninth. Those were All Might's last words as he left to go talk with All for One, leaving behind a shattered Izuku in his wake. Izuku continues to stare at the white walls of his cell, trying to get out of his own memories, yet he can't help but concede to the fact that looking back on his memories is the only way to pass the time. So in an effort to forget about his rage and sadness, he thinks of happier memories in this cage that Japan calls a prison. One of these was him getting to meet Aizawa-sensei's daughter that was rescued from the Yakuza. She was such a sweet girl who was at first afraid of him, which hurt Izuku more than he wanted to admit, before the girl eventually warmed up to him. Eri was her name if he remembers correctly. Aizawa-sensei even got comfortable enough with Izuku to tell him a bit about his personal life. It started off small, like what cats he had and what were their names, which then moved to his time in UA. It's there that Izuku learned of the tragic story of his sensei's close friend Oboro Shirakumo. That was a very tense discussion where Izuku wanted to do nothing more than to remove his restraints and walk to Aizawa to give him a fatherly hug. Yet this all happened quite a while ago, with Aizawa's most recent visit being the strangest, with him being very cryptic. Something about finding where a bunch of villains were hiding. That's all Izuku managed to get from it, but he didn't care much since it wouldn't affect him. Right as he finishes that thought, however, the lights in his cell seem to flicker rapidly before going out altogether. What the hell? Before Izuku could do anything else, the door to his cell opened, and so did the cell to the person across from him. Soon enough, the sound of screaming, explosions, and yelling filled the halls of every prisoner's hell. People running in the halls soon followed, with Izuku seeing prisoners and guards running like headless chickens in the madness that suddenly descended on the supposedly impenetrable prison. Izuku, taking a deep breath, decided to take a step out of his cell and look around him. With no restraints on him due to them only being put on with a visitor in the cell, Izuku went out into the hall to see the mayhem. What he saw will forever be imprinted in his head as a warning to him if he survives. The hall was half destroyed, with there already being fire everywhere and spreading quickly. Looking through the hole something made while crashing into the building, Izuku looked into the courtyard, and the orange hue of flames clashed with the rain, creating a vivid image fitting for the name Tartarus. Inmates fighting for their lives with the guards, people like muscular and moonfish murdering guards in a brutal fashion, and who Izuku assumes to be All for One walking out to see Shigaraki standing on a large black creature. I have to get out of here. I have to get out of here. Izuku repeats that mantra as he also starts running through the halls. He's now very glad he decided to exercise when given the opportunity, because he was able to jump over debris and nimbly move around what was left of Tartarus. He was making good progress in his quest to escape when he heard a scream for help. Without stopping, Izuku's legs turned in the direction of the scream, which his brain didn't seem to process. As he turned the corner, he saw a man hunched over with what seems to be a knife stuck in his heart. The man was yelling so loud that Izuku heard his voice over the roaring inferno they were surrounded by. Izuku, finally realizing what his legs had done, came to a stomp and attempted to turn around, but his legs were rooted to the ground. Suddenly, a bright light appeared in the corner of Izuku's vision. He quickly turned and saw the man glowing a white glow as his BLD on the walls seemed to slowly seep back into him as the wall around them started to fix themselves. The explanation of this being some kind of time quirk passed through Izuku's mind before it was quickly buried by the noise of loud cracking of the man's skin as light started to shine through. Izuku wanted to scream, to run, to hide, yet he couldn't. He could only watch as the man continued to break his body apart before the light within flooded out of the man, exploding him to pieces and encompassing Izuku and his vision in white light. Izuku was cleared of the white from his eyes when he crashed into a body of water. Forgetting how to swim, Izuku started flailing for a second before composing himself enough to swim to the edge of the water where he touches asphalt. He coughs any remaining water from his lungs before standing up. Wah! Feeling too confused to form a complete sentence, he looked around at his surroundings. He was near a bridge and at the bottom of a hill, yet the grass looked more brown than green along with the water, not looking too desirable either. Alright Izuku, think, what happened? I was trying to escape to return to the outside world when I encountered a man with some time quirk that was reversing what happened before they lost control and exploded, and now I'm here with Tartarus not in sight. Izuku, after having months to practice inside a prison, didn't mutter a single word, yet someone who was passing by did notice his scrunched up face, along with his wet clothes. Oi kid. Izuku turns to the person who called and sees a man in jogging clothes getting closer to him. This might be my chance to ask where I am. You called for me, sir? Izuku asks, suddenly being aware of the orange jumpsuit he's wearing and hoping this man doesn't question it. Who else would I be calling? I was just wondering what you were doing near the river. The jogger gets close enough to Izuku so the two can have a normal conversation without any yelling. Izuku panics internally yet doesn't show anything on his face when he responds, I was swimming down the river enjoying the current and didn't realize how far I traveled. Izuku managed to look sheepish to add on to the lie he created. Izuku also takes this time to privately thank his stay in Tartarus for imparting such skills to him, which not only allowed him to survive with other convicts but also the outside world. Oh, well, you should be more aware of such things, kid. The jogger says with a relaxed stance as he talks with this funny kid. Taking this lull in conversation, Izuku asks a question that's been gnawing at him for a while now. If you don't mind me asking, where did I end up? This time Izuku didn't need to pretend to be embarrassed, though it quickly left. Can't have weakness showing for too long with people who can take advantage of it at every corner. The jogger pauses for a second before quickly answering, You're in Fukuoka, young man. If you kept on swimming you would have ended up in the ocean. You got lucky you stopped here. Izuku mulled over that answer before hesitantly asking his last question. What year is it, sir? Strange question. Don't you have your phone with you? There is a pause as both stay silent. Oh wait, if you did then the water would have destroyed it. Well, it's currently September 3rd, 21XX. As the jogger finishes his statement, he's confused on why this young man with green hair seems to have frozen in place. Meanwhile, Izuku has a different thought crossing his mind. How did I travel 19 years into the past? With a nod in thanks, Izuku quickly moved away from the jogger, who after seeing the young man walking up the hill to the street proper continued his jog near the river. However, Izuku had thoughts running through his head so fast that those with intelligence quirks would have trouble keeping up. However, they all got stopped by one singular question which Izuku deemed the most important of them all. What do I do now? The question went out into the empty air for no one in particular to hear. Izuku pauses briefly before continuing to walk through the poor neighborhood he found himself in. All my friends aren't born, all my teachers aren't teachers and still probably students, and the villains aren't even villains yet. Izuku stops that trail of thought as well. If the villains aren't villains yet, does that mean? His breath hitches as he remembers waking up in Tartarus over and over again, earning for the moment he can get out and pursue the dream that has taken the place of his previous one. Could he finally follow through with it? It's then that Izuku remembers what he is. Quirkless. Any elated mood he had immediately vanishes from his face. The face of cold neutrality takes its place before it too melts away to the heat of anger. Anger at finally having the opportunity to make the lives of many people better, yet no power to capitalize on the opportunity. Damn it, damn it, damn it. But why must life be so cruel to me? You gave me nothing to my name, and when I suddenly start to believe things are looking up for me. Izuku clenches his teeth and tenses his muscles as he glares at the sky. It almost quakes. You see everything away from me once again. If Cammy is watching, is my life a sick joke to you? Do you enjoy toying with my hopes and dreams? Izuku couldn't take it anymore. He turned to a run-down-looking building intent on punching it. He didn't care if he was going to hurt or even break his hand. He just needed something to put his anger and rage into. Something to put his mind at ease once again. Tensing his muscles further, Izuku punched towards the wall while putting as much power into it as his quirkless body could, wishing nothing more than to destroy the entire building. Izuku didn't seem to process the light blue orb around his fist until after it slammed in the wall, forming massive white and blue cracks immediately. The air stilled, then shuddered as the world came to a stop, with color leaving soon after in terror of the attack, with only the sound of reality breaking being heard. The light of the majestic white cracks seeped into Izuku's eyes. The sight was suddenly disrupted by a powerful shock wave emitted from Izuku's fist, which pushed him back across the street and into the side of a house. When he looked up, the cracks were gone, but so was the entire house he put his frustration into. Sitting there in utter shock, Izuku didn't move, he didn't breathe, his heart even stopped beating for a second. Eventually, Izuku had his eyes move down to his hand while bringing it up. He couldn't stop his arm from shaking. Izuku only stared as he slowly made a fist with his trembling fingers. Fingernails dug into his palm, but Izuku didn't care. He wills himself to close his eyes and attempt to concentrate. Nothing seemed to happen. No weird feeling. No tingling on his back. Izuku couldn't feel where he summoned that power from. His shaking turned from shock to anger as his frustration mounted, yet the light orb quickly surrounding his fist silenced his rising rage. Izuku stared at it in wonder, replacing his earlier frustration. As he did so, the orb began to shrink with his cooling temper. It's when he finally had this moment of clarity that allowed him to hear the screaming and yelling of people, causing his brain to jumpstart again. Quickly getting on his feet, he sprinted to the nearest alleyway before turning and running into its depths. Not a moment too soon, since he heard police sirens somewhere in the distance. He didn't stop running, his feet carrying him through the twists and turns of the alleys, going deeper and deeper into the rundown area of Fukuoka. Eventually, tripping and almost falling causes Izuku to stop running and take in deep breaths that he very much needed. With his back slowly moving to a wall, Izuku allows himself to slide down the wall. For once in a long time, Izuku's mind is blank. Nothing is going in and nothing is going out, a void. Breathing is all Izuku focuses on for a while until it leveled out. Only then did Izuku allow himself to question what he just witnessed. He looked at his fist again, attempting to will the orb of destruction to appear once more. There was no reaction. Izuku takes a deep breath and releases it, hoping that it wasn't all some strange dream. How did I summon those cracks before? Think. What did I do to use this quirk? The anger at himself caused his fist to glow briefly before receding into the depths of his hand once again. Izuku stared at his fist, eyes studying it carefully. So it reacts to my anger. Not only that, my hand doesn't feel hurt, nor do I feel anything broken. That punch was equal to one for all, yet I didn't feel a thing. Izuku continued to stare at his fist in amazement. He didn't know how long he stared at his hand, but eventually saw the shadows inside the alleyway growing and the light that seeped through turning orange. Getting up from the wall, Izuku felt truly powerful for the first time in his life. Even when he had one for all, he still felt worthless, since he couldn't even control the power and it hurt him every time he used it, requiring him to be saved. But this is the power Izuku knew he needed to achieve his new dream. Eyes which were once dull reignited into an inferno that could rival the one in Tartarus. Nothing felt unbeatable to Izuku anymore. Not Bakugo. Not All for One. Not All Might. He felt as if he was the strongest man in the world. Several months later, Izuku's POV, my eyes begin to flutter open as I stare at the gray ceiling of the bridge I sleep under, although that ceiling is getting closer each time I wake up. The cramps that my body has in the morning have been waking me up for the past several months, with today being no different. I shift my body so I can crawl out from under the bridge and into the light. As I finally get out into a more open space, I allow myself to stand up to my full 10-foot size. I still don't know why I suddenly started growing, but it definitely threw my plans of finding a house to stay in out the window. I do a couple of stretches to hopefully get rid of the remaining cramps I feel from my nightly growth spurts before walking towards the water near the bridge. It's the same canal, yet a bit further upstream, where the water is a bit clearer and that jogger won't find me. Don't feel like explaining this to him. Water splashing on my face clears my thoughts as I continue to clean my face as best I can. As the water calms, I see my green eyes and diamond-shaped freckles reflect back at me, yet the light seems to also reflect against my slowly whitening hair. I believe it's from the stress of my changing body that's causing my hair to turn white, and even though I do love my green curls, less things tying me to who I was before the better. Actually, now that I think of it, will I still be born? I mean, I did time travel back in time to before I was born. Will I end up disappearing if mom doesn't get with dad? Will my past self get these powers? Plus, stop. There is no point thinking these thoughts, Izuku. Standing up from the river bank, I start making it to the poor neighborhood once more. It's easier to hide there since no one's gonna report me to the police and pro heroes since they are all criminals themselves. Besides, I can easily defeat a pro with this new quake quirk I got. I might not even need to use it since I'm growing so big. As I approach the slightly more populated streets, I slide into an alleyway and start making my way through the winding paths. My destination being a grocery store, or more specifically that truck that brings in the fresh produce since it's easier to steal large amounts of food from it. Hopefully this will last me a couple days and prevent my body from using my newly gaining muscle mass as the energy for growth. Don't want to end up as a 30-foot toothpick or however tall I'll be by the end of this. As I cross a few more paths in the alleyways, I stop just before the mouth of one and look at the back of the store. The truck should be arriving soon since they refill the store every 2 weeks, with the last refill being on November 11th and today being the 25th. As I sit and wait, I begin to ponder about the strange quirk I got. Is it a quirk? I don't know. All I know is that I'm definitely strong enough to do what I need to do and finally be a guiding figure in people's lives. Guess the hard part now is actually finding those who need help. The sound of a truck getting close pulled my attention towards it. The truck isn't anything special and it parks in the space provided for it and opens up. Before I rush in, however, I look around to see if any pro heroes or police are nearby. I'm not so stupid as to keep stealing from the same store, but they are bound to find a pattern in my actions eventually. After looking around and not seeing anyone, I take a moment to get in a running stance before my 10-foot frame starts sprinting towards the truck's storage compartment. As I cross the distance of a street in less than 2 seconds, I charge a small quake in my hand before punching towards the workers who just now started yelling. I gave a quiet apology for my action as the shock wave hit them, knocking them back along with stunning them long enough for me to collect my treasure. Picking up several large crates full of things I have no idea about along with some sake, I start to run back to the mouth of the alley. As I'm just about to enter, the sound of a gunshot rings through my ears and I jerk my foot out of the way milliseconds before a bullet drills into the ground where my Achilles tendon was seconds prior. My head whipped around so fast I felt my neck pop. As my legs kept moving and finally reaching into the safety of the alleyway, my eyes spotted a head of purple hair several buildings away. I try to lock eyes, but they are too far away for me to see before the shadows of the alley hide me from view. However, I would be a fool if I stopped running, and no one who went to Tartarus comes out a fool. Carrying several crates, which would normally take 1 or 2 people to carry while sprinting, is surprisingly great exercise, I thought, while running deeper in the labyrinth. As I did, my mind started trying to work out the identity of the person who tried to impede my escape. They are obviously a pro hero, since if it were the police I would have needed to cause a lot more property damage to escape with my food. The purple hair doesn't seem familiar, and since they were so far away I have no idea what gender they are. Their quirk probably helps them see far away, similar to May. I eventually slowed down my sprint into a walk to regain my lost energy. With all the inconveniences being bigger has caused me, my newfound strength and stamina are definitely not one of them. On another note, I should probably head back to my home and hide the food there. Pretty suspicious if I'm seen walking around with all this food. So as I start my journey back, I come up to branching paths in the alleyway. Continuing to walk towards the right one, my ears pick up the faint sound of yelling coming from the left path. I stop to contemplate my decision before turning around and making my way to the left path. Starting to jog through the paths where the voice seems to be screaming from, I try to remain calm, yet I feel my arms tense in preparation to use my quirk. I eventually come to another exit of the alleyway system and peek out to see the situation. Okay, so a decrepit-looking man with brown hair with feathers on his arms is dragging a beaten-looking kid who also has brown hair and... Wait a minute, are those red wings on his back? Is that Hawks or am I seeing things? I couldn't help myself say aloud. The man who seemed on guard heard me say that and turned so fast I thought he was gonna throw the kid. That immediately started to piss me off. If this guy is Hawks' father, then I'm going to need to have a word with him. But are you a pro or something? The guy's anxiousness is clearly visible on his face. I slowly start putting down my future meals on the ground without responding. I need to see what else this SHT show is going to pull. I'm talking to you. If you're a pro, then I've got this child hostage. Don't come close. The filth proceeded to yank Hawks from his side to be in front of him as he held up the little boy as a meat shield. I felt my face morph into a disgusting scowl at this filthy's words. Is this man, he doesn't deserve to be called a father, really going to use the child he shares BLD with as a meat shield? My muscles tense as I begin to walk out of the darkness. The bees seemed surprised. Guess the shadows were hiding how big I was, while little Hawks looked up at me with the same cold dead eyes I had when white walls surrounded me on all corners. My rage only built from there. Do you mind telling me why you are using who I'm guessing is your son as a hostage? I admit it was hard keeping the venom out of my voice. I approach him slowly so he doesn't react unexpectedly to my sudden movements. You didn't answer my question. Are you a pro? This man seemed crazed as I observed his breathing quicken. No, I'm not, came my reply. I want to see what his reaction to that would be. I wasn't disappointed. Even if he looked tense, I saw his shoulders slightly relax and his breathing going back to normal levels. Papa, my wings are tingling again. Hawks says it in such a quiet voice that I had to strain to hear it, but it seems Druggy in front of me heard it loud and clear. You and your diamond wings. Them tingling is the reason we are out here in the first place. I should rip these wings off right here and now. Hawk's blank expression quickly morphed to one of fear before resignation in front of my eyes as the BSU reached one of his hands that's not holding Hawks in front of him to grab the red wings. I took that moment to act. I'm pretty sure the monster didn't even see me move before I had my massive hand enclosed around his throat and he was lifted several feet in the air. His surprise caused him to let go of Hawks, who was also surprised how I moved so fast. I hope you know you're a disgrace to all fathers and you burn in hell. My voice came out cold like a desert on a winter night before I let my anger slip and crushed the filth's neck in my hand. The sound that echoed on the now quiet and dark streets sounded as if I used my quake quirk on him, which now that I think about it, I wish I did. Taking a deep breath to calm down my nerves after killing someone for the first time, I turned to face Hawks. He's still looking at his sperm donor's corpse, which now makes me realize that killing him in front of a kid might not have been the best idea. He takes a couple seconds before he turns and looks up at me. Feeling bad that he's probably straining his little neck to see me, I get on one knee so it's a bit easier for him to see my face. Why did you do it, mister? Such a simple question, yet so much meaning behind it. I take another deep breath to solidify my answer before I say it. Because fathers should never do what he was doing to you. I couldn't let him hurt you anymore. His eyes seemed to regain a little light from my statement. Are you like the pro heroes on TV? Another seemingly innocent question with a difficult answer. I got tempted to lie to the young child before deciding against it. Sometimes the pain of the truth is better than the bliss of a lie. No, I am not. My answer seems to lower his mood, which makes my heart clench. How can such a child and future number 3 pro hero suffer this much as a child? Do you have other parents than your father? I struggled with calling that abomination I killed a father, but I managed. Well, now only my mother. Hawks seems to pause and look down, debating on whether to say what was on his tongue or not. I already have an idea of what it is and I don't like it one bit. You can come stay with me if you want. Seems I surprised him with that if his head flicking up to face me was any indication. Really? Of course. If you don't want to go with me, you don't have to dash. I wasn't even able to finish my sentence before I felt something small collide with my large gray khakis. I looked down to see Hawks shoving his face into my breathed leg before looking up at me with the happiest expression I've seen on him till now. Thank you, mister. He seemed so excited all of the sudden that I couldn't help but let loose a little laugh that sounded more like a gurgle than anything else. Don't get too excited, kid. The place that I'm staying at isn't perfect, but I'll try to make you comfortable. I can't believe I'm talking to a future top pro hero like this. Feels. I walk back to the alleyway to pick up the food and sake I left behind with Hawks trailing behind me. Seeing this, I turn around and grab him by the waist and put him on my shoulders so he doesn't get left behind as I walk. The gasp he let out was very adorable, I'll admit. I stepped around the body, not caring about who found it, and continued my way back to the bridge with my Hawks on my shoulder. Actually, I just realized. I never got your name, kid. 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 Takami. What's yours? I hesitate in my mind for a second, trying to come up with a name that doesn't have Izuku or Midoriya in it before finally deciding on one. Edward Newgate. About 1 month later, the light of a new morning shined on Fukuoka. With new light comes new opportunities. Opportunities a young 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 Takami will be using. In the early morning hues, 𝐀𝐮𝐭 stared at Izuku's sleeping form while being on the giant man's chest. 𝐀𝐮𝐭 continued to stare as he debated on whether to tell his guardian why today of all days was special. 𝐀𝐮𝐭's face of concentration is what Izuku woke up to see when looking at his chest. 𝐀𝐮𝐭, feeling that he was being watched, looked up to see amusement in Izuku's eyes. Puffing his cheeks into a pout, 𝐀𝐮𝐭 turned his head away as Izuku let loose a gurgling laugh. At the same time, Izuku's fingers mindlessly started stroking 𝐀𝐮𝐭's back and feathers, causing the young boy to melt on Izuku's chest. So, are you going to tell me what got you in the thinking mood today? The smirk that accompanied that statement was obvious. 𝐀𝐮𝐭 doesn't respond and simply snuggles closer to the massive pectoral muscles he uses as pillows at night. Deciding that he isn't gonna get an answer, Izuku, or Newgate as he likes to be called, sits up, being careful to keep 𝐀𝐮𝐭 on his chest and that he doesn't bump his head into the roof of the bridge. He's already done that more times than he'll admit and knows 𝐀𝐮𝐭 is going to hold it against him someday. With 𝐀𝐮𝐭 in hand, Izuku crawls out from under the bridge and to the ever-present water next to his home. Putting the 4-year-old boy down near the water, Izuku put his large hands into the running water before splashing it into his face and running it through his now fully white hair in a hope of fixing any bed hair. Izuku looks at his reflection before looking at 𝐀𝐮𝐭's own reflection, which has been distributed by his repeated splashing in his own attempts at cleaning his face. Smiling to himself, Izuku reaches his massive hands to rest them on the child's head. The sensation of hair being pushed further into his palm is enough for Izuku to know the boy he all but adopted enjoyed the head rub he was providing. The two don't share any words, for there was no need for words. Their actions spoke for them on what they felt and wanted. It's because of this that Izuku knew 𝐀𝐮𝐭 wanted to tell him something yet didn't seem to have the courage. Izuku resolved to wait until the young boy would tell him what was troubling him. After finishing, Izuku got off his knees and stood up to his new full height of 21 feet and 10 inches, towering over even the bridge he stays under. Izuku was sure this was as big as he was gonna get, since the cramps he got every night suddenly disappeared one day when he reached this new size. It's also due to his growth stopping that made Izuku decide to get a large lime green flannel that matched his new size, with the top half of the flannel being open to reveal his very muscular chest. The lower end of the flannel was fastened by a dark green cloth. Making sure 𝐀𝐮𝐭 doesn't feel left out, Izuku managed to get him a black hoodie and gray jacket along with several other pairs of clothes. Is there anything you want to do today other than practicing with your quirk? Izuku asked, attempting to start a conversation. 𝐀𝐮𝐭 seemed to hesitate in his response before stretching his neck to its absolute limit in hopes of looking the man who raised him in the eyes. I want to meet a hero. Izuku paused and mulled over how he could accomplish the young child's wishes. In the meantime, he reached down, plucking the winged child off the ground and putting him on his shoulder. 𝐀𝐮𝐭 will privately admit to himself years later that the view from Newgate's shoulders is infinitely better than when he's flying. I might have a way, but it's all about if we get lucky to spot one. Izuku responds without turning his head and begins approaching the nearest alleyway to remain as hidden from sight as a 22-foot-tall man can get. Though I should still be wary about that sniper. Izuku couldn't help but look over to a scar at the top of his bicep where a bullet grazed deeply into it. He couldn't move his hand out of the way in time, though it was better than getting his bicep torn to shreds, so he'll take a scar. With 𝐀𝐮𝐭 on his shoulder, Izuku moved quickly as he already memorized these alleyways to maximize his travels. Through the many openings the alleyway system possessed, 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 saw middle schoolers, teens, adults, and parents all basking in the light of the sun while he and 𝐻𝐻𝐽𝐻 had to hide in the shadows. It confused 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 on why 𝐻𝐻𝐽𝐻 doesn't walk among the people. That way everyone can see how cool Pop 𝐻𝐻𝐽𝐻 is. 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 corrects himself in his mind, yet he couldn't help but yearn to call his father figure Pops. However, the fear of rejection held him back. You want to know why I stick to the alleyways instead of going out in the populated streets? Seemingly able to hear the unsaid question, Izuku responds with his own question. Gaining a blank face in hopes of hiding his surprise of being found out, 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 simply nodded while pondering how he was found out. Could this be a father thing? 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 decided to leave it at that. The reason I don't go out in the streets is because people are gonna be scared. 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 got confused at that. Why would they be scared? You haven't done anything to them. Well, except maybe stealing clothes and food, but that's it. Came 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫's counterstatement. Izuku chuckled at the young 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫's innocence. It's because I'm different. That didn't seem to be the answer 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 was looking for, so Izuku went further. I'm taller, bigger, stronger, different. Even with everyone having quirks, I'm so different to them that they'll notice me. They will probably think that I'm a pro hero, but when they learn I'm not, they are going to fear me and believe I'm a villain. Why is that? Because people believe that those who are different than them are only going to hurt them. It's what they are told by the Hero Public Safety Commission all their lives, so they start to believe it. 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 is silently listening as Izuku takes his silence as a notion to continue talking. Because of this, people who can't control their strong quirks or people with strange quirks that seem creepy are called villains or monsters. If they can't serve or fit in with the people out there, Izuku tilts his head in the direction of the masses. Then they are a threat that must be stopped. That is how the world works, 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫. People get treated unfairly, and all they can do is become the very things that the people over there called them. Villains. Before 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 can open his mouth, Izuku continues to speak. Now, not all villains are like this. A lot of them are like your father. 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 can hear the anger 𝐻𝐻𝐽𝐻 has for him, which makes him feel giddy. People who only want to hurt others and become villains to do so. Those people deserve to be crushed and forgotten. I speak about the villains who start out like you. Small and adorable. 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 pouts at this but lets 𝐻𝐻𝐽𝐻 continue talking. Kids who had hard lives and were pushed away by everyone around them. They have nowhere to go and are forced by circumstance to do bad things. It's those that I want to help. I want to be there for them since the world never was. Izuku feels 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐽𝐻 suddenly stare intensely at him. Stopping and turning his head, Izuku and 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐻 lock eyes. Izuku witnesses the constant flicker of life 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐻 now possesses in his eyes, while 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐻 sees an inferno of raw, unmatched power driven by a wave of overflowing conviction inside the green orbs of his father figure. 𝐀𝐮𝐻 swallows after hearing the speech. This is the best time as any to ask for what he really wanted as his birthday gift today on December 28th. See, can I call you Pops? 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐻 almost screams the last part, slightly attracting the attention of those walking near the alleyway. A silence descends on the two of them as 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐻's anxiety starts to seep in. Why did I ask such a stupid question? Now he's gonna feel disgusted by associating himself with me. I'm just a random kid who has useless wings, just like Mom always said. I should leave him so he doesn't need to keep taking care of him. A strong hand firmly grasping his body snaps him out of those thoughts. 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐻's body instinctively tenses, getting ready to receive a hit like his father usually gave him, yet it never came. Instead, he felt his body get dropped off at the crook of 𝐻𝐻𝐽𝐻's neck with his hands still on 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐻's body so he doesn't fall. Of course. My son. Those words reverberated through 𝐀𝐮𝐻's body and soul. For the first time, the young boy allowed tears to grace his face as he all but tried to wrap his small hands around his pop's neck. Izuku let 𝐀𝐮𝐻 release his pent-up emotion, deciding to be the pillar his son needed at the moment. 𝐀𝐮𝐻 cried for several minutes as Izuku continued to rub his fingers in 𝐀𝐮𝐻's feathers to calm him down further. Eventually, 𝐀𝐮𝐻 finally finished his waterworks with him sniffling up any remaining snot into his nose. He looks into Pop's eyes and Pops looks back at him. Izuku sees a bright flame of hope in the little boy that will not be quenched for as long as he lives. 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 sees an inferno of raw, untamed power overflowing with love for him that leaves 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨 stunned. 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨 uses his wings to float up to Pop's shoulder before they continue to search for a hero. 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨 POV feeling the wind hit my body as Pops moved through the alleyway was amazing. I looked at Pops as he continued to concentrate on where he was going and felt my face form a smile. I have an actual Pops now. One that isn't gonna hit me and says my feathers are useful unlike Mom. Mom, I wonder where she is right now. No, I shouldn't think about her. She never liked me anyway. As we keep moving, I try to release a few feathers behind me and try to feel what they feel. It's what Pops has been trying to teach me for the past month. He got the idea after I told him about Mom's floating eyeballs. Pops is so smart when it comes to quirks. I let the wind pick up my feathers instead of controlling them. Suddenly I feel like there is even more wind all around me. It's like I'm flying. Pops says he can teach me how to fly if I want, but I need to learn to control my feathers better before I do. So I'm gonna try really hard to make Pops proud. Turning around, I don't see my feathers anymore. Guess Pops really does move super fast. I try to pull them back to me, though it's really hard. I puff out my cheeks to hold my breath so my feathers will hopefully come back to me faster. I start to see my feathers after a bit, but I still hold my breath. I don't want to make the feathers go slower. I suddenly feel Pops stop, which almost throws me off his big shoulder if I wasn't holding on to his shirt. My stupid feathers then finally reach my back. Stupid red feathers. You gotta be faster than that to help Pops. I turn around to see why Pops stopped. The light from outside the alleyway hurts my eyes a bit, but it clears enough to see a cool-looking lady wearing black and cool-looking purple hair. It was so long too. Actually, if I look closer, there is also some pink in there. I turn to Pops wondering why he stopped, but all he's doing is staring at the lady who just keeps walking. Is this lady a pro hero? I thought they would look cooler like on the TV. Sometimes I wish Pops had a TV, but he always takes me outside, so I don't need it anymore. I look back at the lady while putting on my best concentration face. Pops definitely sees something. Any other time he sees a hero, he quickly looks away. But this time he's looking at her for a long time, so there must be something. It seems I was so concentrated that I didn't notice Pop's hand until it was right in front of me. I felt his big hand close around me and bring me to the ground. He gets on one knee so I don't have to hurt my neck. Thinking about it makes my neck itch, so I scratch it as Pops talks to me. She might not look like it, but she's a pro hero. I'll be waiting further in the alley, so can you give me one of your feathers so you know where I am, son? Nodding my head, I let a feather fly into his open hand as I turn around. Oh, and her hero name is Lady Nagant. Can't believe I forgot to tell you that. The last part Pops muttered, but my feather picked it up. Maybe my quirk isn't so bad after all. Anyway, I shake my head to get these extra thoughts out of my head. I'm gonna meet a pro hero on my birthday. I slowly walk out into the light. My skin started feeling much warmer and my wings shook a little. It feels so nice standing in the sun. Is that way heroes always walk around in the day? Continuing to use my little legs, compared to Pops, I slowly get to Lady Nagant. That's what Pops called her. I should ask her why that's her hero name. She seemed to feel me getting close because she turned to look at me. For a second I saw her eyes. They reminded me of how my eyes looked when the TV turned black and I saw myself. Her eyes quickly changed to seem brighter, but I know it's not real. I feel myself frown. What wrong, kid? Nagant asks me. I stop in front of her and look at her. I did the same to Pops so he would tell me what he's thinking. I don't say anything and it seems she's getting a little nervous. Before she can say anything else, I interrupt. Why are you sad? She leans back and blinks several times really fast. She was funny. Are all heroes funny like her? What do you mean, kid? Lady recovered fast. You look sad. At that, Nagant looks at me before smiling and crossing her hands under her melons. Pops are bigger and he's not even a girl. Oh. And what makes you think I'm sad? Leaning close to my face, she asks me. Is she stupid? How does she not know that she is sad? Pops knew I was sad. Maybe he knew she was sad as well. Maybe Pops wants to help her like he helped me, and that's why he was looking at her. I'm so smart. But I don't let my face show how happy I am for figuring out what Pops was thinking. Your eyes. That makes her stop for a second before closing her eyes and smiling at me. I feel she's not taking me seriously. Your eyes looked like mine before Pops saved me. That seemed to get her attention as she looked closer at me and something flashed in her eyes. Her face became super gentle, almost like her previous one was a mask or something. Hey kid, can you follow me? I have something to tell you. Why did she change what we were talking about? Where are you gonna take me? I can't go far since Pops is waiting for me. It's my birthday and I asked him if he can let me meet a pro hero, so he brought me to you. I finish off my sentence with a smile on my face. Anytime I talk about Pops makes me feel happy. I get out of my thoughts and see her looking around for some reason. Is she looking for Pops? I also start to look around for him before remembering the feather I gave him. Trying to feel where it is, I find it still in Pop's hand, who is still waiting for me in the alleyway even if I don't see him. Has this Pops hurt you? That question snapped me out of my concentrating. Then I actually think of what she said before I feel myself getting angry. Pops hurting me? He would never. Pops doesn't hurt me. I hear myself say loudly and a few people turn to look at us, but I don't care. She recoils her hand that was reaching for me. If Pops wanted to hurt me, then he would squash me because he is so big. But he doesn't hurt me. He hugs me, scratches my head and feathers and tells me he loves me. He's a better Pops than my father ever was. I finish my sentence and start running away. My eyes sting a bit before I feel tears go down my cheek. How can she say Pops hurts me? Is that way Pops doesn't go into the light? 'Cause people are gonna say he hurt them too. My legs follow where I feel my feathers since my eyes are too blurry with tears. I don't see so much as feel when a big hand catches me running into it. The next thing I know, I feel my face pressed into Pop's chest. Feeling his heart shake my body calms me down, so I'm just sniffling. How can I be useful to Pops if I keep crying like this? Pops probably feels upset with me. Don't cry, my son. Everything is going to be okay. I'm still here and always will be for you. Pop's words stop my bad thoughts. I sniffle some more and hug his chest as best my arms allow me to. I feel him stand up and start moving again. The wind felt nice against my wings and back. My eyes began to close as I felt very tired. I tried to stay awake, but the cool air and Pop's comfortable hands were too much and I went to sleep. What 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 didn't know was that when he went into his adoptive father's arms crying, two pairs of eyes made contact. One was a pair of brilliant green eyes that were clouded in shadow yet held unimaginable power in them, ready to be used in a moment's notice. The other pair was of a dull purple which seemed to darken the longer time passed, begging to be saved. Izuku was running on autopilot, moving through the darkness with no fear or hesitation. His only concern is to make sure his newly acquired son is safe and secure. I should have done something to hide that 𝐵𝗫𝗠𝗱's body after I killed him. Izuku mindlessly thinks as he keeps moving. However, something else begins to surface in his mind. Seems there really was more to what happened to 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫. His mind supplies him with the flash of dullness in her eyes he recognizes all too well. Izuku makes an effort to make as many twists and turns as he can on the off chance that Lady 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨 follows him. He didn't hear much from the conversation between 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨 and 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨, but from the small murmurings of, "Pops doesn't hurt me," Izuku can guess where the conversation ended up going. Talking time to appreciate how fast he's moving, Izuku sends a small prayer to whoever made him grow so big, even if he has to be hunched to not peek over the surrounding buildings. A couple of turns later, he knew that the bridge was getting close due to the sudden silence that enveloped him. The populace doesn't come to this area after all. Izuku exhaled as he continued to move through the more comfortable silence. That is until Izuku stops as the sound of a bullet rings throughout the alleyway. 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨 murmurs and moves a bit before settling in his arms once again. The silence returns rapidly, bringing tension not present beforehand. Izuku protectively moves his hand to cover more of 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨's body as his eyes see the bullet hole where his next step would have been. Following the trajectory, he sees the familiar dull eyes of Lady 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨 staring back at him on a rooftop 3 buildings away from him. Still hunched, he waits for 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨 to get closer to have a proper conversation instead of yelling like lunatics and waking up his son by accident. Lady 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨 notices the invitation and slowly approaches him, pulling at her long hair to load another bullet into the literal hand rifle she possesses and pointing the rifle at him the entire time. The silence is crushing, yet Izuku doesn't seem bothered. If anything, he straightens himself to his full towering height. Nagant, who was moving closer, stops and simply studies the giant man, now only a single building length separating the two. I don't suggest you shoot again. My son just cried himself to sleep. The because of you went unsaid but not unheard. He isn't your son in the first place. Nagant replied pointedly. No, 𝐻𝐿𝐴 narrows his eyes. He became my son the moment the world abandoned him. The conviction in his voice made Nagant shudder. And what gives you the right to decide that? Nagant quickly counters, leveling her quirk on 𝐻𝐿𝐴's head. Are you given the right to decide what you want to do, or is it decided for you? 𝐻𝐿𝐴 stares directly into Nagant's purple eyes. He isn't able to keep eye contact, though, due to Nagant's sudden trembling. Shut up, it comes out quiet. Why do you allow yourself to be trapped? You are clearly in pain. I see it in your eyes. At the mention of eyes, Nagant seems to shake more and clenches her teeth. Shut up. Her voice raises an octave. Her elbow quaking as her emotions she has kept buried for years now keep bubbling to the surface. First those kids wanting my autograph, and now this. I just want it to end. Let me help you. Just like I've helped young 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫. Shut up. You don't know what it's like. You're just a villain who killed a man and stole his son to brainwash. You don't know how it feels to be abandoned, used, discarded into the wind. I know how it feels. 𝐻𝐿𝐴's voice reverberates throughout the alleyway and Nagant's body as she stops trembling. I know how it feels to watch those you trusted turn your back to you. I know how it feels to have the person you view as a parent walk away from you when you did no wrong. I know how it feels to lose everything on the whims of someone else, and I refuse to allow that to happen again, not to me or anyone else. 𝐻𝐿𝐴's words travel across her body as an earthquake, traveling through her muscles, her bones, and her veins. She couldn't move, her body refused to move. She tried to force her body to do something, falling back on her training, but it still refuses to move. It allowed her brain to distract itself from processing the words she heard. However, it couldn't for long, as memories of her loved ones and past actions come to haunt her all at once. She closes her eyes to stop the tears and succeeds for the most part. Nagant deactivates her quirk to clutch her head in pain as the memories don't stop. Flashes of her childhood, of when life was simpler, quickly replaced with men in suits from the Hero Public Safety Commission, taking her away from her family and telling her to forget the name 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫. Her grueling training and the first kill follow quickly after. BLD painted the rest of her memories, with even those good moments in between being hazy to her. Nagant tries to look into recent memories, anywhere to prove the man who appears bigger than life wrong. It's there she stumbles on the memory of kids asking for her autograph. She mentally smiles before looking down and seeing the familiar color of BLD on her hands. Just like in the memory, she retracts away from the kids. The kids get replaced by a small, dirty blonde child with red wings looking into her eyes deeper than a child his age should. Kiego Takami. She read the reports of the police finding his father's dead body, murdered, and the boy missing. The father was a piece of work that was going to be arrested when caught, but the kids still needed to be found and given a safe home to grow up in. She was in the area and decided to do one last mission as a pro-hero before asking to resign. She never expected for that same boy to walk up to her and show more care than everyone else in her life after she started as a pro-hero. However, the fact the kid mentioned someone else by the name of Pops put her on high alert. Is there a villain manipulating the boy from the shadows? She remembers trying to hunt a particularly large villain who keeps stealing from stores, but she throws the thought out as unreasonable. That is until she sees the same villain in the alleyway. 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 runs into crying. Many thoughts pass through her head in that instant. Why does he have the kid? What has he told the kid? How far did he already manipulate the kid? He's just like the commission. Nagant's mind replays the chase she had with the large man along with her surprise at his speed before bringing her back to the present. She looks up to the man she doesn't even know the name of, waiting for her reaction. What makes you different from them? The amount of venom lacing that question would have killed 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 several times over, yet he still stood tall. If all the things you just said are true, what's stopping you from being like them? 𝐻𝐼𝐿 sounded broken. 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 lets the silence eclipse them once again before he gives the woman his answer. I saved 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 because no one did and no one was going to. I want to save those who are pushed to the brink because of the system we live under. The same system that is breaking you. The system that refuses to give love to those born different. I will love them like the sons and daughters I never had and support them no matter what they do. It is the least they deserve for being cast out as monsters by this veil society. And if I have to fight the commission to keep my family safe, then so be it. It is a father's duty to protect what he loves. And as for turning into the very thing I fight. 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 lets out a little chuckle. My future sons and daughter will prevent me from turning into such a monster even if the rest of the world sees me as nothing but a monster. 𝐻𝐼𝐿 stands on the roof speechless. She can't say anything. To the man who had basically declared war on the Hero Commission, a global organization. And the part that stunned her the most. A part of her believed he could win. So I ask again, let me free you from the chains you are trapped in. Come, join my family. 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 reached his massive hand out to her. 𝐻𝐼𝐿 felt her hands tremble as the hand stopped in front of her, offering love and compassion she has missed for several years of her life. Yet as she reached out to take the hand, 𝐻𝐼𝐿 hesitated. 𝐻𝐼𝐿 couldn't understand why, but something inside her was stopping her from taking the hand to supposed freedom. I'm sorry. I can't. The pro-hero pulls back her hand and puts it on her chest. Let me just ask the Hero Commission. I'm sure they can still be reasoned with. They both knew she was saying that to reassure herself more than anything, and 𝐻𝐼𝐿 was glad 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 didn't comment on it. Before 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 can say something himself, however, a new voice enters the conversation. Let me help too. Both adults freeze before looking down at 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫, who has woken up during their conversation. If Pops wants to help you, then I should too. Even if you said mean things about Pops. The last part being more of a mumble. 𝐻𝐼𝐿 smiles at the young boy but shakes her head while 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 stays slight and lets the conversation play out. I thank you for willing to help me, but I don't need it. Everything will be okay. The nervous smile on her mouth wasn't helping her case. 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 deadpans at her. Well, at least take one of my feathers. As he says that, a small red feather flies out from his wings into 𝐻𝐼𝐿's open palm. What's this for? 𝐻𝐼𝐿 picks up the feather between her fingers and looks at it. She spins it around a few times while 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 happily explains. I can sense a bit from each feather, so if you're in trouble we can help. At the exclamation, 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 shoots his hands into the air. 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫's small chortle made 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫's smile widen. Taking his eyes off his son, 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 turns to look at Lady 𝐻𝐼𝐿 one more time, making eye contact. As my son said, if you're ever in trouble we'll be there. Or I'll be there. 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫, not processing what his pops said, nods along towards the pro-hero, who he started to realize is a lot like him. Lady 𝐻𝐼𝐿 didn't really know what to think. People see her for what she really is, not the pro-hero Lady 𝐻𝐼𝐿, not the weapon used by the higher-ups to clean up their mistakes, but as 𝐾𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 Tsutsumi. Yet, she couldn't help but feel bittersweet at this acceptance. They probably don't mean it. I shouldn't hope too much. At least I enjoy being around them. Lady 𝐻𝐼𝐿 looks at 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 and 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 on final time before saying her goodbyes and running away on the rooftops, tucking the feather into the color of her hero suit. Unseen, 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 makes a confused expression at how his feather feels like it's touching a soft pillow and makes a few assumptions on what it is before blushing crimson. Lady 𝐻𝐼𝐿 continues to jump over alleyways and run across apartment complexes before eventually finding a way down to the street. Her mind was still buzzing with the conversation she just had. I want to believe, I really do. But even if you are big and have some kind of shockwave quirk, you can't fight the Hero Commission. Wait a second. I don't even know his name. Quickly whipping her head back to the alleyway, she knew it was fruitless to try and find him again. Guess we'll see if you are able to back up your promises or if you're like everyone else. Pops 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 looked up at the sky with the sun glaring in his eyes, being answer enough that it's around noon. Making sure his son is still in his hand, 𝐀𝐮𝐽𝐡𝐨𝐫 finishes the remaining journey to the bridge unimpeded. As he reaches the bridge, he gets on his knees and places 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 down on the ground, who jumps off the hand and looks up at his pops for direction like a puppy. Chuckling, 𝐻𝐽𝐽𝐻 lets one of his fingers mess with 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐴's hair, who closes his eyes to enjoy the feeling more. When can we see 𝐻𝐼𝐴nt again? 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐴 asks as 𝐻𝐽𝐽𝐻 retracts his hand. Looking down, 𝐻𝐽�𝐻 has a thoughtful look that forms into a slight frown. Not for a while, most likely. 𝐻𝐽�𝐻 lies. It hurt to do, but something tells him he'll be seeing Lady 𝐻𝐼𝐴nt much sooner than he would like 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐴 to believe. However, we are going to need to move. What do you mean move? How is she gonna find us if we go somewhere else? 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡 retorts and sports his own frown on his small face. Well, she has one of your feathers, doesn't she? You can tell which direction she is at least. At the mention of his feather, 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡 blushes before attempting to clear it from his face to hide it from 𝐻𝐽𝐽𝐻. Why yeah? 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡 said loudly, trying to cover up his blush further. However, it soon disappears and is replaced with a sadness 𝐻𝐽�𝐻 immediately picks up on. But I could barely feel her even now. My wings are so useless. Why couldn't I have been like you? 𝐻𝐽�𝐻 looks at his son along with the anger radiating off him at himself and moves to put a stop to it. 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡 feels two massive thumbs on either side of his shoulders, which seem to pull him out of his self-hatred. Gold eyes stare into green for the second time that day. Never say such things, my son. Every quirk is wonderful and has a purpose. No matter how bad it may seem, there is no such thing as a useless quirk or villain and hero quirk for that matter. There is only people and the power they wield to make the lives of those around them better. Never try to throw such an important part of yourself away. You never know if you might be the only person who can save someone one day. 𝐻𝐽𝐽𝐻's words seemed to carry wisdom and power, which shook 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡 to his core. His body began to shake as more tears started appearing on his face. 𝐻𝐽𝐽𝐻 had a brief thought of 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡 being secretly a Midoriya before discarding the thought to pick up his son in his hands once more. 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡 cried once again into the chest of his ever-present father figure. Memories of his childhood with his parents continuously saying his wings are a hindrance and useless flash into his mind until they are destroyed by the voice and love of his pops telling him the opposite. After a couple of sniffles, 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡 got the tears of happiness out of his system and looked up at 𝐻𝐽𝐽𝐻 with a smile that only showed admiration. 𝐻𝐽𝐽𝐻 reciprocated with his own smile. Now is a perfect time to use those wings of yours. 𝐀𝐮𝐽𝐻 perked up at that. Get anything we left under the bridge and bring it in front of us with your feathers. I am much too big to get it myself. 𝐻𝐽𝐽𝐻 finishes off with a smirk at his son's determined face as feathers fly out from his back. The feathers soon enough fly out from the bridge with several water bottles, crates, and spare clothes. 𝐀𝐮𝐽𝐻 seemed happy that he was able to do this with his feathers, as 𝐻𝐽𝐽𝐻 simply enjoyed the joy radiating off the boy's smile. Good job, son. With the small bits of quirk training we did and you believing in yourself, you did so well. 𝐻𝐽𝐽𝐻 was quick to compliment, causing him to almost get blinded by the smile 𝐀𝐮𝐽𝐻 sent his way. Now then, since we are going to be leaving, let's finish what's inside the crate so we don't waste it. Reaching for the crate, 𝐻𝐽𝐽𝐻 opens the box to eat its contents with his son. However, 𝐀𝐮𝐽𝐻 seems confused and voices his question. Why don't we just grab it with us? Wouldn't it be easier and we can eat on the way to wherever we are going? 𝐀𝐮𝐽𝐻 turns to one side as he looks at 𝐻𝐽𝐽𝐻, who only grins in response. I want to try a different way of traveling, and it would be more difficult while carrying a box. This piqued 𝐀𝐮𝐽𝐻's interest, but 𝐻𝐽�𝐻 tells him to eat up since he might not be able to later. 𝐀𝐮𝐽𝐻 doesn't think anymore as he eats to replenish the energy he lost in the day's wild events. It didn't take long for the duo to eat the rest of the food, with 𝐻𝐽�𝐻 eating most of it for obvious reasons. 𝐻𝐽�𝐻, throwing the last of his lunch into his mouth, looked down at 𝐀𝐮𝐽𝐻, who continued to nibble on his portion. 𝐻𝐽�𝐻 takes the moment and lifts the small child into his palm, with said child continuing to eat undisturbed. With son in hand, 𝐻𝐽�𝐻 started to make his way down the river towards the ocean it flows into. 𝐀𝐮𝐽𝐻 didn't question where his pops was taking them, having total faith that 𝐻𝐽�𝐻 knew what he was doing. The trip to the beaches of Fukuoka took several hours due to multiple factors, and 𝐻𝐽�𝐻 cursed his height once more. With the need to hide his large frame being a necessity with the sudden increase of people, 𝐻𝐽�𝐻's progress slowed significantly. By the time he did reach the beach, he could already see the sun approaching the water in front of him. He looks down at his son to find him peacefully sleeping against his chest, putting a smile on 𝐻𝐻𝐽𝐻's face. Turning to face ahead, 𝐻𝐻𝐽𝐻 veered towards the cement docks instead of the beach. I've done this a couple of times, but time to see if it works long distances. 𝐻𝐻𝐽𝐻 contemplates as he slinks through the alleyways as the noise of people in the city seems to muffle. I'll try to get to Zenkai Island. If it's not safe enough for me and 𝐾𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫, then I'll just go farther to Iki Island or even Tsushima. With his thoughts finished, the previously muffled noise of the crowd came back full force. 𝐻𝐻𝐽𝐻 tensed his muscles before releasing the tension with an exhale. He wanted nothing more than to use his quake quirk and silence them all permanently to allow his son to sleep, yet knew he couldn't do such a thing. Getting closer to the end of the alleyway and docks in sight, 𝐻𝐻𝐽𝐻 started to pick up his pace before coming to a dead stop with 𝐾𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫's sudden jolt and scream. The world silenced itself to 𝐻𝐻𝐽𝐻 as his sole focus was on his breathing son. 𝐾𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 in his panicked state looked around himself before finding the eyes of his father, and that simple action expels the intense emotions he felt seconds ago. Taking several deep breaths and swallowing, 𝐾𝐮𝐭𝐻 kept eye contact. 𝐵𝐺𝐴NT, that is all 𝐻𝐻𝐽𝐻 needed to hear to understand the situation. His mind running faster than lightning, trying to think of ways he can help. It's in this state his mind made the connection of this being when 𝐵𝐺𝐴NT gets sent to Tartarus. The realization puts 𝐻𝐻𝐽𝐻 even more on edge. 𝐾𝐮𝐭𝐻 observed his pop's unmoving face but knew there was more emotion hidden under the stoic facade. The emotion my feather is sensing is strong. 𝐾𝐮𝐭𝐻 breaks the tense silence they fell into with 𝐻𝐻𝐽𝐻 coming out of his thoughts to listen. I can kind of feel which direction my feather is, if that helps. The further he spoke, the quieter 𝐾𝐮𝐻 became, as if he was going to get scolded. He even started to twiddle his fingers and look down. Seeing this, 𝐻𝐻𝐽𝐻 became confused by this reaction. What is the matter? That is good news. 𝐾𝐮𝐻 looks up, and it's then that 𝐻𝐻𝐽𝐻 notices the slightly hazy look the eyes of his son possess. It doesn't last long as 𝐾𝐮𝐻 shakes his head, clearing it. I don't know what that was. I just suddenly felt you would hurt me. Like you weren't letting me be free. 𝐾𝐮𝐻 almost seemed disgusted at the fact he even suggested such things. 𝐻𝐻𝐽𝐻 ponders this for a bit before clearing it out of his mind. Well, it doesn't matter now. We gotta save Lady 𝐵𝐺𝐴NT. 𝐻𝐻𝐽𝐻 mentally cringes at the fact he has to endanger the life of his son by taking him, but without 𝐾𝐮𝐻 there would be no way to find 𝐵𝐺𝐴NT. What direction do you feel your feather in? 𝐾𝐮𝐻 wordlessly pointed northeast, basically the opposite direction to where 𝐻𝐻𝐽𝐻 was taking his son. Seeing the direction, 𝐻𝐻𝐻 let loose a tired sigh. On the bright side, I get to try and see if this technique works. Hide behind my hand. I'm gonna run out in the main streets and I don't want people seeing you. 𝐾𝐮𝐻 nodded at the order and pressed himself against 𝐻𝐻𝐽𝐻's chest as the palm he slept on covered his body. With 𝐾𝐮𝐻 secure, 𝐻𝐻𝐻 straightened out his back, feeling the satisfying pops as he did so. Inhaling, 𝐻𝐻𝐻 looks away from the direction that would lead to Tokyo and gazes straight ahead at the docks. Bending his knees, there is a momentary pause before wind starts rushing past him and the faint screams of surprised civilians reach 𝐻𝐻𝐻's ears as the edge of the dock is fast approaching. Any fence in his way was rammed through and any car was sidestepped out of the way of. Finally reaching the water edge, 𝐻𝐻𝐻 began to go even faster, appearing as a blur to the untrained eye even for his large size. Just before taking the next step into water, 𝐻𝐻𝐻 jumped high into the air, and what followed was the roar of reality being shattered. Lady 𝐵𝐺𝐴NT POV. Several minutes beforehand, the echo of my shoes on the tile floor only increased my growing nervousness. The white hallway I'm going through doesn't help, nor does the answer I expect to receive for my request. Eventually, the door that has been the bane of my existence since I became a hero came into sight. I stop in front of it and simply stare at it. I sent a message to the chairman to let him know I wanted to request something from him, but it seemed he also had something for me as well. That only seemed to raise the anxiety inside me. Whenever the chairman has a request, it's always to kill someone. My body shudders as I attempt to even out my breathing. The feeling of Takami's feather against my chest relaxed me more than I thought it would. Guess he and his pops have kinda grown on me. What am I saying? I only met them one time. Why do I care about them? They won't care about me. No one does. Creaking of the door brings me out of my mind. Seems my arms moved on their own, No going back now. Looking forward into the meeting room, it reminds me of the hallways, sparse. The light from the large windows which take up an entire side of the room let the light of the evening sun cast its shadows on me and the chairman. Seeing me enter, he looks up from the pitiful table and calls a desk to address me. "Ah, so you finally came. You took a bit longer to get back. Normally when I call you, you get here as fast as possible." The chairman crinkles his nose, which slightly disturbs the glasses on it. "I decided to do one more case before coming here." I answered his unasked question with him just giving a hum in acknowledgement. "Well, either way, you made it in time for your new assignment dash. Sir, I apologize for the interruption, but I have a request." I didn't want to hear what he would make me do this time. I refused to do any more of this. The chairman looks surprised at my outburst before his face shifts to frustration and then neutrality, all in the span of 4 seconds. "And what would that request be?" I heard the threat in that question, yet I didn't care. "I want freedom. I'll do anything for it. Sir, I would like to retire." I witnessed his face morph into surprise again. However, this time he seemed tired as the wrinkles on his face became more defined. "Nagant, you know that can't be done. Someone must preserve the hope and faith that the front-facing heroes have built up. There is a reason you are here." The chairman continued talking more, but my ears tuned it all out, with ringing being the only thing I hear. Was this always meant to be my fate? To be a weapon to those above me? Clean up the streets when it's the people at the top who should be removed? But why me? Why was I the one? Why don't they care about me? Stuck in my thoughts, all I could do is blankly stare at the chairman, who continued to talk. When I finally started to gain my hearing again, the chairman was finishing up his rant. That this isn't a job you can simply walk away from. No. I will not take this answer. My body and mind numb, I look into the eyes of the chairman. No, this entire system has taken enough from me. I'm not letting it take anything else. President, the chairman slightly straightened his back. That is the position his body tensed on when I activated my quirk and pointed the barrel at his head. You're a strong one to say that to me. His body started to fall before the sound of the bullet rang through my ears and the rest of the building. As his body hit the ground, making a disgusting thumping sound on the floor, I stared at him numbly. I thought I would feel free by killing the person who kept me chained, but nothing changed. I'm still trapped. I didn't even feel the guards slamming me into the ground and putting cork cuffs on. I only knew they were there because my vision was slammed into the ground and covered by multiple shadows of heavily armored people. All I could do was continue to stare at the chairman and hear the muffled yells of those around me. It didn't take long for them to shove me into a heavily armored transport truck, with the destination being quite obvious. But I simply didn't care. Why should I? I'm still not free, so what does it matter? At the end of the day, I am just switching one prison for another. 2 guards sit by my sides and the cuffs on my hands are definitely weighing me down, most likely chained to the floor of the truck. Guess I should get comfy. It's gonna be about a 3-hour and 30-minute drive to Tartarus. Makes me wonder why they built it off the coast of Omizaki in the Shizuoka district. Was it purposeful that they made it close to Mizudafu and by extension UA? Why am I asking myself these questions? Guess the silence in this truck is already getting to me. That is how most of the trip went. Just me trapped in my thoughts, just how I have been trapped for most of my life. It's during this time to think that the words of a certain large man come back to mind. Just thinking of what he told me. I barely hold in my shudder to not disturb the guards. Guess he really was right. While on that train of thought, I remember the feather that Kigo Takami gifted me with the promise of helping. I snorted at the notion then and still feel the same now. It will only bring me false hope, so I shouldn't think of it. At this point my brain is too tired to think anymore, so I close my eyes in hopes it will ease the pain. After a while my mind begins to clear, leaving me with the sound of my breathing and the tires of the car on asphalt. The muffled voice of the person driving did reach my ears, but I couldn't hear what they were saying through the thick glass. But not even a moment later, I felt everything shake. I felt the truck stop suddenly, and I opened my eyes in time for the truck to shake once more. The guards beside me start frantically moving and standing up when something hits the truck, causing me and everyone inside to fly forward. The cuffs kept me in place for the most part, but they hurt like a beach. The truck comes to a stop with everyone slamming into their seats. I can hear the sound of explosions going off outside, and I assume the guards as well. They started giving order through their radios. What is happening? Is someone stopping the transport? But why would anyone try to save me? I didn't have much time to continue these thoughts as the truck hit the accelerator to try and escape whatever is happening outside. However, that didn't seem to work as the glass separating me and the driver is suddenly splattered with an all too familiar red. The guards, seeing the driver compromised, turned to face me, and the brief hope I had at escaping this quickly fades away to numbness. Why did I start to hope again? How can I be such a fool? Reaching for their guns, I watched helplessly as my execution approaches quickly. Yet it seems it was never meant to be, as something slams into the truck and the somewhat familiar sound of cracking echoes throughout the transport. The sound subsides as when the truck is spinning in what I believe is the air, since the guards start floating inside the compartment. The transport eventually lands on its side with the guards slamming into each other on the way down. Taking this moment, I start struggling against the cuffs to get me out. If I can at least be able to use my quirk, then these guards wouldn't be an issue, and the person attacking this police 𝐬𝗓𝗓 will be dealt with as well if they try to control me. My desperation to escape increases when the guards start to get up, with the chain rattling being the only loud sound my ears pick up. One of the guards makes a noise and goes to pick up his dropped gun when the turtleneck of my hero costume rips to make way to a red feather that flies true into the guard's neck and out the other end. Both me and the remaining guard are surprised for a second, but that's all it takes for the feather to veer towards the other guard to kill him. As the guard crumples to the ground, I stare at the feather in shock, remembering the promise that came with it. No, they wouldn't have come. They couldn't have come. Why would they come for me? The silence inside the truck became unbearable for me. I didn't suffer any longer, however, when the door to the side facing the sky is suddenly dented by a large fist. The dent increases in size for the next couple of seconds before a small opening is made. Through that, a large finger is fitted through, which proceeds to rip the door off its hinges. What greets me is the dark sky behind the large frame of Pops. I couldn't stop the surprise from appearing on my face. Pops simply smirks and laughs to himself as Takami makes his appearance as well. "Hello, Lady Nagant. We are here to save you." The kid yells down to me. My mouth refused to move as I simply continued to stare. Why? My mind continued to short-circuit. "Here, let me get you out of those things." Takami continued to speak even with my shocked state, sending down several of his feathers that collided with the chain to chip away at it before it finally cracks. It didn't take long until the chain holding me in place broke, yet I didn't fall. Instead, I felt myself being supported by several feathers. Takami seemed to be trying his best to hold concentration, if him holding his breath was any indication. When the feathers took me out of the confines of the black truck, I turned around and saw what was left of the transport. Multiple police cars that followed the truck were overturned, completely destroyed, on fire, or a combination of all three. I turned around to Pops when I felt myself land on his open palm, which made me realize how truly big he is. It's when I look into his eyes as the sound of fire and broken sirens play as background noise that I blurt out a question I've been asking this entire day. Why? I just wanted someone to tell me. Any answer will do. Because I never turned my back on my family in that moment. Everything went silent. Everything from the still exploding cars to the screaming of people and police, and even the wind became nothing but white noise as my brain processed what the giant of a man just said. My body starts to tremble as I feel my self-control that I've honed for years slip and allow tears I've kept in since I started killing for the hero commission flood my eyes. Why? I ask again. Why would he consider me family? I'm just a tool. I've always have been. Because I don't ever want anyone to hurt you again. To cage you again. I want you to be free. My daughter, I couldn't hold it back. Tears flooded my face like a broken dam. I felt myself collide with Pop's chest as I let weakness show for the first time in what felt like my entire life. Even as I croaked out sobs, Pop's hand held me close and rubbed my hair. I'm pretty sure 𝗀𝗏𝗏𝗏 also hugged me while I cried. I wish I could have stayed there for the rest of my life. Never in my life have I felt this secure and loved in the arms of someone since my parents. Yet even they moved on from me when the hero commission showed themselves into my life. I lost track of time, but at some point Pops started moving with me and I guess my new brother, that's gonna be weird to get used to, towards the mountainous area on our west. Pops starts walking before beginning to pick up speed in order to begin running up the steep rocks. His hold on me and 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 becomes more firm to keep us safe as he almost looks to be gliding across the rocky ground. But what worries me is when we start approaching the top of the hill, yet he doesn't seem to be stopping. If anything, he seems to speed up. Fear suddenly grips me. Is this all gonna end like this? Is this just one big dream? 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 seems to see my fears and laughs at me. Pops is about to do a trick which allowed us to get here so fast. Don't worry. He yells over the wind rushing past us and leaves me slightly embarrassed that I let my fears show. Just as 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 said, Pops reached the top of the hill and jumped. My breath hitched before I heard the sound of reality breaking and a sudden shockwave blasting us higher into the air. I looked down to see what happened and witness one of Pop's shoes have some kind of white orb surround it as he kicks the air under him, creating marvelous white cracks that then releasing a powerful shockwave. As I realize we are basically flying, I hear the excited shouts of my little brother over the howling wind. Turning to him, I see him cast in a golden orange glow of sun with the biggest smile on his face I think I'll ever see. I look up to Pops and see the same golden orange glow on him as well, making him appear as a great deity with eyes trained towards the horizon. Following his example, I turn back and see clouds below us radiating the symphonies of the sun and the sun itself slowly setting in the distance in real time. My breath escapes me and so does all the pain of my hardships. Everything seems to fade away as for the first time in my life I feel free. The view from above the clouds was nothing short of breathtaking. However, 𝐻𝐻𝐻𝐿 knew he couldn't keep this up for long. His legs were terribly sore after doing it from Fukuoka all the way to Shizuoka, which would normally take 4 hours and 30 minutes by train into about a 2-hour trip. So due to this, he started to descend, which was quickly noticed by his 2 passengers, with both giving a scream. Whether it was a scream of terror or excitement will never be known. After several more shockwaves to slow down, 𝐻𝐻𝐻𝐿 and his kids saw the ground approaching fast, and 𝐻𝐻𝐻𝐻 braced his legs along with tightened his grip to not let his children get hurt. The ground exploded under the feet of the 22-foot-tall man, raising a massive dust cloud and shockwave. Moments later, 𝐻𝐻𝐻𝐻 rushed out of the dust screen while covering his passengers' faces to prevent the inhalation of dust. Not caring about his surroundings, 𝐻𝐻𝐻𝐻 charged forward through trees before eventually he felt his legs buckle. The momentum caused him to fly forward down the hill he found himself on. During the short flight, 𝐻𝐻𝐻𝐻 turns his body mid-air to land on his back. Another loud noise is heard in the woods, except this time it's 𝐻𝐻𝐻𝐻's back sliding on the dirt until his momentum ceases and brings him to a stop. It's only then that 𝐻𝐻𝐻𝐻 makes an audible exhale and relaxes the rest of his body. His arms, which acted like seat belts for 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 and 𝐾𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫, fell on either side as if they were a chopped tree. Said people also release an exhale of their own at the impromptu roller coaster ending and turn to look at 𝐻𝐻𝐻𝐻. After getting several more deep breaths, 𝐻𝐻𝐻𝐻 was the first to speak. "I'm sorry for the rough landing. I didn't mean to scare you, my children." 𝐻𝐻𝐻𝐻 tries to lift his neck while talking, but the strain is too much and he settles for staring at the darkening sky. I would rather go to Tartarus than experience that again. 𝐾𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 gave her new Pops a blank look while 𝐻𝐻𝐻𝐻 looked at her as if she was stupid. "What do you mean? That was so fun. Can we do it again?" 𝐻𝐻𝐻𝐻 inputted his own 2 cents, causing 𝐾𝐮𝐻𝐻 to turn to him in surprise. That was followed by both occupants shaking due to 𝐻𝐻𝐻𝐻's chuckle. "I'm afraid I can't do that, my son. My legs are too tired and I currently can't feel them, so I can't even move from here if I wanted to." At that, 𝐾𝐮𝐻𝐻 becomes alert and quickly stands up from 𝐻𝐻𝐻's chest and walks down his body towards his legs. Quickly walking on top of the leg to check if there is any break, 𝐾𝐮𝐻𝐻 works quickly with 𝐻𝐻𝐻 looking on. "Is there anything wrong, my daughter?" 𝐾𝐮𝐻 pauses before resuming her checkup routine. "Nothing appears broken, which is honestly a miracle that your body can take this much damage and only now stop working." 𝐾𝐮𝐻 responds after a few seconds of silence and returns to be with her new little brother. 𝐻𝐻𝐻𝐻 lets loose another chuckle. "And I'll continue to get stronger to protect you too." This caused the sibling duo to smile, making 𝐻𝐿𝐴 see light in the corner of his eyes. Is this what people saw whenever I used to smile? 𝐻𝐿𝐴 couldn't help but think, glad he didn't get blinded. My legs should recover after I sleep, so I'll see you kids in the morning. 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 suddenly stiffens, and before she can stop herself, I'm not a kid anymore. She crosses her arms and turns away from 𝐻𝐿𝐴. Hee, that's what a kid would say. 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 quickly retorts, causing 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨 to twist her neck to face him for the second time. The surprise on her face is evident before it turns to annoyance. What is that supposed to mean, brat? A hand reaches and pinches 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨's cheek before he can move away. I let go. I'm gonna tell Pops. Their banter continues until it gets interrupted by a laugh that seems to shake the branches around them. Echoes from 𝐻𝐿𝐴. Seems you two are getting along just fine together. You already sound like siblings. 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨 and 𝐀𝐮𝐿𝐴 blushed, not needing to turn to see 𝐻𝐿𝐴 smile. As fun as it is listening to my children bond, it's best we go to sleep. If someone or something comes, wake me up. With that, the giant man closes his eyes. The sibling duo look at each other with 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨 flopping on 𝐻𝐿𝐴's chest on his side and 𝐀𝐮𝐿𝐴 mimicking him. Soon after, 𝐻𝐿𝐴's massive hands cover both of them like a blanket. 𝐀𝐮𝐿𝐴 smiles to herself as she slowly drifts into sleep. Is this how it feels to be cared for? I could get used to this. Before the sun even rose, 𝐀𝐮𝐿𝐴 found herself awake and alert. Immediately analyzes her position and situation, which has become second nature to her due to the training the commission put her through. It's through this analysis she realizes that 𝐻𝐿𝐴's giant hands are trapping her. She looks around herself and sees 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨 sound asleep along with 𝐻𝐿𝐴. After several unsuccessful attempts to escape the big blanket called a hand, 𝐀𝐮𝐴 gives up. Seems they aren't gonna wake up anytime soon. Might as well rest some more. The guilt of waking up her pops this early in the morning also helped in deciding to go back to sleep, which came quickly. Eventually the small family begins to stir when the sun rises over the tree line. With 𝐻𝐿𝐴's newly recovered legs, the group of three continued their journey down the hill they found themselves on until the glimpses and noise of cars gave them pause. 𝐀𝐮𝐴 quickly climbs up to 𝐻𝐿𝐴's shoulder to get a better view of their location and gives her pops directions to walk parallel to the highway they found themselves near. That is how they spent several hours of their morning. The crunching and rustling of trees along with the occasional speeding car was all that accompanied them. Yesterday. 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨 broke the silence with his father putting 𝐀𝐮𝐿𝐴 on the same shoulder as 𝐀𝐮𝐴. After a short pause, 𝐀𝐮𝐿𝐴 continued. Yesterday was my birthday. And it was the best birthday I ever had. 𝐀𝐮𝐴 had a brief flash of everything that happened the day before and couldn't help but ask herself how that was a good birthday. She didn't get to think any longer as 𝐻𝐿𝐴 spoke up. Why didn't you tell me? I would have tried to give you a better birthday. 𝐻𝐿𝐴 frowns at the fact he didn't realize it was his son's day yesterday, and instead of letting the kid enjoy himself by giving him presents, he took his kid to save a hero from a corrupt government. How can I call myself a father if I'm endangering my son on his special day? I'm a disgrace. 𝐀𝐮𝐴, seeming to sense 𝐻𝐿𝐴's frustration, slightly flinches, which 𝐀𝐮𝐴 picks up immediately. Are you all right? The question erases 𝐻𝐿𝐴's self-loathing instantly and turns his head to look at his children. Sorry. The sheepish reply comes from 𝐀𝐮𝐴, who rubs one of his arms while looking away. My father before Pops used to hit me on my birthday. 𝐀𝐮𝐴 seemed to mumble the rest in his continued apology. The sound of the foot slamming into the ground resonated throughout the woods as 𝐻𝐿𝐴 came to a stop. He tried to resist the urge to punch and destroy the entire hill, so instead decided to grind his teeth together to the point he created atom-sized diamonds through pressure alone. 𝐀𝐮𝐴 had her breath hitch as she quickly hugs 𝐀𝐮𝐴, pulling him close to herself. That won't happen again. I promise, and so does Pops. She takes a glance at 𝐻𝐿𝐴, who relaxes once again to not distress his son any more than he already has. Besides, you got your new big sister 𝐀𝐮𝐴 to help protect you. 𝐀𝐮𝐴 finishes while flashing 𝐀𝐮𝐴 a smile which his eyes seem to sparkle at. Really? The puppy dog eyes 𝐀𝐮𝐴 gives 𝐀𝐮𝐴 almost makes her heart give out from cuteness. Really? 𝐀𝐮𝐴 confirms, which elects a cheer from 𝐀𝐮𝐴. I really have a pro hero as a sister. Best birthday ever. At the change of mood, 𝐻𝐿𝐴 resumes his pace to get them closer to a town or city. However, 𝐀𝐮𝐴 wasn't finished. Besides, I'm gonna be the one protecting you like I did yesterday. 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫's smile slowly fades as she sees the cheeky grin on her brother's face. The rest of the trip was filled with screaming, pinching, and the occasional call of, "Pops, help." This helped tame the anger which still remained inside of 𝐻𝐻𝐽𝐻, never truly going away. Eventually, the group of three begin to see tall office buildings in the distance. It's at this point that 𝐻𝐻𝐽𝐻 stops before the clearing and looks at his children. After having a wordless communication with 𝐀𝐮𝐻, 𝐻𝐻𝐽𝐻 raises one of his hands which 𝐀𝐮𝐻 uses as a platform to get down. "Hey, I wanna go too," 𝐀𝐮𝐻 quickly announces when he figures out what's happening. 𝐻𝐻𝐽𝐻 turns to look at his youngest child who in return gives his best puppy eyes. Sighing in exasperation, 𝐻𝐻𝐽𝐻 nods to his son who glides down into his sister's arms. "Stay safe, the news probably already came out of you escaping and they most likely branded you as a villain 𝐀𝐮𝐻. Run to me if you find trouble." 𝐀𝐮𝐻 nods in understanding before putting 𝐻𝐻𝐽𝐻 down on his feet. After a couple of moments, 𝐻𝐻𝐻 sends out one of his feathers to 𝐻𝐻𝐽𝐻 and waves goodbye. Several minutes later, "Why do I have to walk?" 𝐀𝐮𝐻 felt a small tick mark grow at 𝐻𝐻𝐻's complaint. "Maybe it's because you're a growing boy who needs exercise instead of being on Pop's shoulder all the time," comes 𝐀𝐮𝐻's reply as they continue to walk through the alleyways. "Just admit you're not strong enough to lift me. No need to bring Pops into this." 𝐀𝐮𝐻 suddenly stops and slowly turns her neck to face the small boy who has the nerve to smirk at her. She stares at her little brother for a bit longer before turning away and continuing to walk. "You think your little taunts will work on me? I'm a trained pro hero, I don't fall for such things." 𝐻𝐻𝐻 slumps in disappointment before quickly running up behind his sister to keep pace. After a couple more twists and turns, the siblings stumble upon a park with the city's name on it. 𝐶𝐻𝐿 City Nature Sanctuary, 𝐻𝐻𝐻 reads out helpfully. Not at successfully reading the name, 𝐻𝐻𝐻 turns to 𝐀𝐮𝐻 to see she's deep in thought. "So if this is 𝐶𝐻𝐿 City, then that means we are close to Nagoya in Aichi Prefecture." Concluding her thoughts, 𝐀𝐮𝐻 looks back at 𝐻𝐻𝐻. "Do you want to go and play in the park for a bit? I'm pretty sure Pops wouldn't mind." 𝐻𝐻𝐻 hums in acknowledgement but stays silent. "But I don't want to worry Pops. Let's just go back and tell him where we are. Also maybe get him a new shirt." At 𝐻𝐻𝐻's reminder, 𝐀𝐮𝐻 realizes that she should also get new clothes to blend in more instead of being in her hero costume. "Good idea, let's head back to see if we can find any clothes that can fit Pops to surprise him." At the suggestion, 𝐻𝐻𝐻 lets out a small giggle as the duo move away from the park and back into the alleys they came from. Similar to 𝐻𝐻𝐻's home city, the streets were bustling with activity and noise. However, 𝐀𝐮𝐻 and 𝐻𝐻𝐻 didn't care for it and continued moving forward to the nearest clothing store. That changed when the lively voices outside on the streets suddenly turned to panic. 𝐀𝐮𝐻 notices immediately and picks up 𝐻𝐻𝐻 in her arms before telling him to hold on to her back so he doesn't impede the usage of her quirk. Carefully peeking out the alleyway, the source of the panic is quickly identified. It's quite clear who it is since the civilians around them either run the opposite direction or rush to the nearest house begging to be let in. Those in cars speed up past the individual or the drivers abandon the car entirely. Meanwhile, the cause of the commotion simply continues to walk with a hollow look in their gray eyes. The kid looks to be around 12 years old, from what 𝐀𝐮𝐻 can tell, with white hair along with shabby clothes. Looking up briefly at the chaos he has caused, the kid pauses and waits for the streets to become barren and silent before he continues his walk. 𝐀𝐮𝐻 notices how he seems to be saddened when the people run away from him and takes a deep breath, deciding on her next move. "I need to help that kid. But how do I do that? I'm not good with kids. Who to call? Oh wait, Pops is good with kids." Quickly turning to 𝐻𝐻𝐻, who has his eyes locked on the white-hair kid, she whispers for him to call Pops to them, only receiving a small nod from the 5-year-old boy. Elsewhere, 𝐻𝐻𝐻 is sitting with the trees looking at the clouds which seem to be slowly gathering. His attention is taken away from them when he sees the red feather in his palm fly towards a certain direction, with 𝐻𝐻𝐻 getting up and following it. 𝐀𝐮𝐻 and 𝐻𝐻𝐻 discreetly follow the white-haired boy who walks in the now empty streets unimpeded. After a couple more streets of aimless walking, the boy stops in a wide intersection. The only thing heard is the slowly rising wind accompanied by the graying sky, making 𝐀𝐮𝐻 think it's going to rain. There are many eyes that watch me whenever I come outside. Many of them have fear while others are hatred. Yet yours are of pity and curiosity. What? It's at that moment the young man turns to face in the general direction of his would-be stalkers. 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 in that moment activates her quirk on reflex, causing a rifle to come from her elbow. She points it at the white-haired boy in an unspoken threat. So you two are just like the rest. I should have known. The previously gray eyes begin to turn a menacing red. Now there is no need to resort to violence. The booming voice of 𝐒𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 interrupts both parties from their face-off. 𝐒𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 walks out from one of the alleyways with the mysterious boy and 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 surprised at the fact they didn't spot him sooner due to 𝐒𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 tower over the surrounding houses. 𝐒𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 looks at 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 and wordlessly tells her to cancel her quirk, which after a small protest she does. And who are you? A hero these people called in to put me away because of my quirk. The red-eyed boy questions. No, I am not. I'm here to help you. 𝐒𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 responds to the boy's accusation. Looking into 𝐒𝐮𝐿𝐴𝐡𝐨𝐫's green eyes, the boy simply stared. That's what those before you said as well. Yet all they did was try to oppress me to serve them. They were weak and saw my strength as a threat. Oh. And what is it that makes a brat like you so strong? The boy stares blankly before raising his arm towards the sky and flicking his hand. At the motion the sky darkens and a flash of lightning is seen in the sky followed by the thunder it produced. 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 seems to flinch as 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 tightens her grip around her little brother. At the display 𝐒𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 simply chuckles, which surprises the boy, showing emotion for the first time during the conversation. What's your name, kid? 𝐒𝐮𝐿𝐴𝐡𝐨𝐫 smirks down to the kid who has his face morph back into neutrality. As if I should give my name to someone who is weaker than me. Raising an eyebrow at that, 𝐒𝐮𝐴𝐡𝐨𝐫 sighs internally at what kind of child he managed to stumble upon. And why would that be, brat? Because your gigantification quirk is nothing to what I'm able to do with mine. The sky seems to rumble again with the statement. 𝐒𝐮𝐴𝐡𝐨𝐫's eyes seem to bore into the eyes of the white-haired boy as said boy slightly fidgets under the stare. A strong quirk isn't what makes someone strong. Neither does a weak quirk make the user weak. Both should be valued for who they are. 𝐒𝐮𝐴𝐡𝐨𝐫's words seem to cause the boy to start trembling. If that's the case, then why am I outcast for having a strong quirk? If that's the case, why am I not valued as much as those who are weaker than me? If that's the case, why do the weak control the strong? As the boy begins to lose himself, the sky seems to crackle with lightning and strong winds, yet 𝐒𝐮𝐴𝐡𝐨𝐫 remains unfazed by it all and continues to look at the boy. The system we live under is flawed. It hurts those that are seen as different, such as yourself, or doesn't help them at all. 𝐒𝐮𝐴𝐡𝐨𝐫 gestures to his children who stand behind him. Let me help you like I helped them. Let me show you that quirks are not the only thing that makes someone strong like this society likes to make people believe. Allow me to show you the truth, my son. At the end, 𝐒𝐮𝐴𝐡𝐨𝐫 begins to extend his hand towards the boy. The teen pauses as everything around him seems to fade for an instant. All that's there is him and the hand of the giant man who called him son. He wanted to believe the man was lying, that this was all a trick to control him for his power. Yet the love he felt from the voice which traveled through his body felt too real to ignore. Slowly, the boy began to reach out his small hand towards the one offered. He wanted to feel that love again. A feeling he hadn't felt since he got his quirk. A quirk that causes everyone to run away in terror except the man in front of him. However, it's in that moment when pain racks his body as small purple marks grow on his body. In the moment of weakness, he loses control of his quirk, causing a massive bolt of lightning to fall from the heavens in front of him. This time, to everyone witnessing the moment, time seemed to slow. The wind which carried the droplets of water from the dark clouds came to a halt along with the roaring of thunder becoming muffled. Only the light of the approaching lightning illuminated the faces of those watching. 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐴𝐫 and 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 watched in dread as the lightning approached 𝐒𝐮𝐴𝐡𝐨𝐫, the man who helped them when no one did, a man they loved as their father even if some of them knew him for such a short time. He had offered them love when the world refused to do so. Similar thoughts rang through the mind of 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 as he watched the pillar of light his quirk created descend on the one person who gave him a chance. As all of them watched the bolt approach the giant man, 𝐒𝐮𝐴𝐡𝐨𝐫 seemed to be the calmest of them all. In the brief moments he He retracts the hand he was offering to the brat in front of him. Then, time speeds up to normal as a massive explosion that deafens everyone there is heard. All present look at 𝐻𝐻𝐽𝐽 only to see his fist raised and a myriad of cracks blocking the lightning bolt from hitting him. 𝐻𝐻𝐽𝐽's hand trembles before he pushes his fist forward, destroying the lightning and sending a massive quake which ruptures the sky. As the light leaks through the now parted storm clouds, 𝐻𝐻𝐽𝐽 extends his hand to the stunned 𝗂𝐻𝐻𝐿 who looks at his hand and then at him. The light almost seemed to capture 𝐻𝐻𝐽𝐽 in a holy light. I'll ask again. What's your name, son? 𝐶𝐿 POV storms have always put me at ease. There is just something about the way they ravage the world we live in, not caring who lives or dies. They are the only thing I can rely on. Yet this power I possess to summon them hurts me. Just like everyone else in my life. At least until now. My gaze shifts to look at the man who calls himself Edward 𝐻𝐻𝐽𝐽, or as most people around him call him, Pops. I didn't truly know what to think of such a man. Someone with a power that could rival mine, with a stature that towers over those around him. Such a man would be immediately targeted and shunned like I have been. Yet, he doesn't seem to hold any hatred towards them. Doesn't he despise how the world around him suppresses and forces his hand? Why doesn't he? What does he see I don't? My eyes linger on the giant man as he sends off his children into Nagoya City to enjoy the New Year's festival. I haven't talked with them much, especially with how our first interaction went. I believe they are still wary of me, yet the small one does speak with me from time to time. After saying their farewells, the woman who introduced herself as Lady Nagant took the young boy, who I learned was named Kigo Takami, outside the warehouse we are currently staying at. I didn't quite care that the ex-pro hero didn't share her name with me. We are all entitled to our secrets. 𝐻𝐻𝐽𝐽 lets out a breath before turning to face me. I can tell you want to talk with me. Say what is on your mind, son. There he goes again with calling me his son. Even if a small part of me yearns to be called such, why does he call those around him his children? Does he really view himself as above everyone? I've let this question consume my mind long enough. Why do you see everyone as children? That seemed to give the man pause. Because all those I want to help have all been shunned and wronged by this world. They have no one to turn to in their times of need. They are simply lost children who need someone to turn to. What better than a parent, someone who is meant to never turn their back to a child? 𝐻𝐻𝐽𝐽 finishes his reasoning and looks intently in my eyes, causing my body to shudder. I can't help but feel his power behind his words and eyes that make me feel even smaller compared to him. What gives you the right to help? Is it the fact you have a strong quirk which makes you have demps over people? If that's the case, then why are you and I not the ones ruling the weak and telling them what to do? 𝐻𝐻𝐽𝐽 seemed to sigh at my questions. Can you answer me this? What makes you believe it should be the strong who rule? The answer came quickly. It's been one I've had since I was able to think. My quirk. It gives me the strength that puts me above others. It's the natural order of things. Just as it is with the animals. Silence. That is what I'm greeted with after my statement. 𝐻𝐻𝐽𝐽's face seemed to darken, and I couldn't help but tense in preparation to summon the sky to my side. So, you're just like them and you don't even realize it. What do you mean? You're just like the society you want to change so much. Quirks are all you are able to see, not the person underneath. I sat in silence. They suppressed you all your life and you plan to do the very same thing. Are you really changing anything? There will be change. I'll be on top. My eyes hardened at the statement, matching 𝐻𝐻𝐽𝐽's intense stare with my own. Silence surrounds us once again. It gave me time to reflect on what just came out of my mouth. When did I become selfish with my dream? Never mind. I know the answer. It's the answer to everything else wrong in my life. 𝐻𝐻𝐽𝐽's movements caught my attention as he shifts to a kneeling position instead of sitting. Come here, that's all he says to me. Did I anger him? I do have a different dream for this world. It seems this is how our relationship is going to end. But at least I get to die to someone stronger. Just as nature dictates it. I slowly get up from the cold floor and shamble lifelessly to my death. Guess I shouldn't have let emotion take over me a couple of days ago. How foolish of me that was. Looking up, my dead gray eyes meet vibrant green. Maybe this is why he told his kids to leave. I wait patiently for my death as I see 𝐻𝐻𝐽𝐻𝐽 raise his arm. Oh, a painful death then. The hand descended on me with my eyes quickly shutting, getting ready to welcome my eternal darkness. Why am I still breathing? His arm is wrapped around me, so why isn't he crushing my body yet? I'm sorry, what is he on about? What is there to apologize for? I'm sorry for being a terrible father by not being there for you when you needed it most. You had to grow up so young in a world that hated you. No one deserves that, you don't deserve that. I felt my body begin to tremble in 𝐻𝐻𝐽𝐻𝐽's massive arms. Why does he care? Why is he the only one who cares? Is it because he also has godly power like myself? That must be it. I was right. This world makes the strong suffer. Why can't you just see that? I begged. I begged for this man to understand. I begged for Pops to see what I see. That this world must change and only the one I've envisioned will allow us to be free. Pops only seemed to chuckle at my plea. My anger flared. Because the strong aren't the only ones who suffer under this society. I should know. My anger suddenly forgotten, I look up once again to the man who calls me his son. What I'm greeted by is dull green eyes that match my own. It felt so. I haven't told this to anyone, but I wasn't always this powerful. Pops sighed and his face went into resignation. It hurt to see him like this. But what? Why do I suddenly care? I used to be quirkless. I barely heard the gasp I released into the otherwise quiet warehouse. All my attention was on Pops. Everyone treated me as if I was a mistake, something that shouldn't exist. I experienced that for most of my life until I decided that I've had enough. I started training my body to be able to follow my dream, and eventually that led to me what I am now. Pops took a deep breath and he continued to have his undivided attention on me. Made me feel special. I was ecstatic, I was finally like everyone else. Yet a part of me knew that it didn't really matter. They would still see me as the Deku they always called me. I felt his body tense in anger, and for a second I feared I would unintentionally get crushed, though I was spared such a fate when Pops calmed down. You asked me why I don't see it. It's because I've seen more than you have, son. The weak and the strong are crushed by the people. You have the power to change that. Why should you only let one side get the benefit? Do you see now, son? There was no great way to describe what I felt. I felt as if there was a storm inside me that keeps tearing apart every cell in my body in hatred. It hurts, though I've had this pain all my life. However, there is a new feeling. One of warmth. I can't describe it. My body feels cold, yet there was a comfort there as well which spread across my body like the rays of the sun. I couldn't think with this sensation and only stayed in the hug Pops gave me. I even felt like crying at one point. Just let loose everything I have, though I'm not weak enough to do that. The strong can't show weakness, so neither will I. And I'll make sure that Pops never shows his weakness again. Wait a minute. What are you going to do? My voice quivered for a second. You said I'll change things. What about you? I didn't want to do this alone. Not when I don't have to be. Pops seemed to get what I'm saying as he directs a smirk at me. Well, someone still has to take care of and save brats before the system changes. You'll find siblings who are willing to help you in your quest. But I'll always be by your side. I've failed you once, I won't fail you again. I do a sharp intake as the sound of snout echoes, causing me to cringe. Pops just does his weird gurgle laugh before rubbing my hair with a finger. Come on, let's go see the New Year sky. The night air felt cold and crisp as it always does. The sounds of people and vendors selling their wares fills the streets, mixing into a chaotic symphony of happiness and celebration. Yet not everyone is able to partake in such a symphony. One such individual looks down at the crowds of people from the roof of a tall building. The man is crouched to be less visible to those below, even though he knows everyone is busy enjoying the celebrations down below. With a brown coat draped around, the man blows in the wind, though it doesn't bother the man. His blue dress shirt and jeans offer more protection, with his wolf-like fur covering everything his clothes didn't. He was kinda glad for it, even if it's part of the reason people fear him. Looking down at those below makes him feel sick with hatred. Look at them go. So happy to enjoy themselves while they treat me like a monster. The individual's large reptilian tail swings with his growing anger, and he can't help but let a small flame escape his wolf jaw. Realizing his anger will lead him nowhere, the creature reaches into his coat with his 𝐒𝐮𝐬𝐿-like hands for a cigar. Pulling it out, he quickly puts it in his mouth. Feeling the familiar texture, his tongue and jaws work in tandem to move the cigar to the right side of his jaw. Let loose a small flame, the cigar comes to life with the 𝐾𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 taking a deep puff of his stogie. The reaction is immediate as the previous tension from emotion quickly disappears, and even the beast's snake-like dreads seem to lose their tension. The 𝐾𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐵 stays like this for a while with him, even sitting down and putting his back against the small curb by the building's edge. It's been some time since I've been this relaxed. Maybe with the police, heroes, and most definitely the public occupied with this stupid new year, I can rest for a bit. Hee, I'm gonna have my own little new year up here with my good old friend. The 𝐾𝐼𝐭𝐴's eyes seem to move to the cigar in his mouth before his sharp eyes catch a vibrant white which didn't match the dark setting he found himself in. Sitting up with a start and moving into a crouched position ready to jump away if necessary. The beast turns his head and is greeted by a giant of a man with white hair with green eyes which seem to pierce the dark, along with a much smaller teenager with white hair and gray eyes standing on the giant's shoulder. This awkward stare down lasted for a much longer time than both parties would like to admit. Apologize for intruding on your space. This is the only spot I found that wasn't decorated with civilians. The colossal man spoke up to end the tense air, though the beast man's stance never released its tension. Are you a hero? The 𝐾𝐼𝐭𝐴 asks the question immediately, with the massive man letting off a small chuckle and the teenager simply staring into the beast's hollow yellow eyes with a perpetual blank face. No, I am not. The man turns to face the main street. If I was, then I would be there, wouldn't I? The monster man seems to think for a bit, takes a puff from his cigar, and gets out of the crouched stance. Standing up to his full 6 feet 10 inches, the 𝐾𝐼𝐭𝐴 barely clears the large white hair of the taller man, who by then turned back to face the wolf-looking man. Well then, if that's the case, what brings you out here? The cigar seems to roll in his mouth as he asks. Same thing that brought you. This time it was the teenager who responded, who turned to face the crowd like his pops before him to emphasize his point. This caused everyone to turn and face the fortune people of Nagoya as another silence enveloped them, with only the sounds of the city filling in the noise. The 𝐾𝐼𝐭𝐴 seemed fine with the silence and even slightly enjoyed staying in the presence of people who share a slight bit of his pain at the very least. You shouldn't spend the new year alone. The silence is broken after several minutes by the white-haired man, the tall one. The wolf man's eyes glance at the man before going back to the crowds. Well, it's not like I have anyone to be with. The venom in that statement was so potent one would think the 𝐾𝐼𝐭𝐴 was part snake as well. The giant doesn't respond, letting the ambience of the festival fill in their silence. Then why don't you join us? Turning around quickly to face the bland voice, the beast came face to face with the white-haired teen. The name is 𝐶𝐮𝐬𝐴. The large man seems surprised for a brief moment before pride seems to swell on his face. If we are doing introductions now, then I'm Edward Newgate. The two wait for the wolfman to speak up, yet he stays hesitant. After 10 seconds of debating with himself on whether to share his name with strangers, the 𝐾𝐼𝐭𝐴 makes his decision. Chojuro-kan, the now named Chojuro, does add much more before letting the conversation die once again. However, the air is filled with awkwardness as the father and son wait for the beast man's response to their invitation. However, that silence got once more broken. Pops. Many minutes earlier, the lights and the bright colors of all the stalls and clothes seemed to reflect off of Kigo's eyes as he continued to stare in wonder at things he's never seen before. It made 𝐾𝐮𝐴 feel bittersweet at the thought. They mostly stuck to side streets to avoid the main crowds, though it didn't matter much since all the streets were filled to the brim with vibrant pinks, reds, oranges, and many other eye-popping colors. Kigo didn't mind, and 𝐾𝐮𝐴 simply hoped no one would recognize her after she dyed her hair white, much to her pop's chagrin. After several minutes of simply staring, Kigo finally managed to speak. Why are there so many people? They are celebrating New Year. Most celebrate it with their family. Though it was hard to hear the small boy, 𝐾𝐮𝐴 answered his question. Kigo seems to nod at her words. So does that mean we get to celebrate with pops? Turning to face his big sister with the lights of the world reflecting off them, he waits for an answer. Of course, that is when he gets here after knocking some sense into that Erasure brat. 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 finishes with booping 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫's nose, which causes him to cover it. 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 lets out a pout as 𝐀𝐮 giggles at his reaction. They continue moving through the stalls with 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 eyeing each one. Suddenly, 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 feels 𝐀𝐮 pick him up in her arm and move towards the stall. Effortlessly, 𝐀𝐮 walked by the stall selling meat skewers and grabbed 2 of them before blending back into the crowd. 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 looks down at them with a frown on his face. At this, 𝐀𝐮_𝐭𝐡𝐨. I know you don't like us doing this, but it's how we have to live. She hands 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 one of the skewers as they continue to walk. Can I at least have the one with chicken on it? He reaches out his small hands to the skewer left in 𝐀𝐮's hand. He then, not as masterfully, suches the 2 skewers before having a smile return to his face. 𝐀𝐮 allows herself to snort and put 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 back on the ground so he can walk beside her. What's a chicken like you eating his fellow kind? Hey, who are you calling a chicken? My feathers aren't even the same color. Besides, I'm smarter and stronger than a chicken. 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 seems to move his hands with everything he says, causing some people who saw it to giggle to themselves. 𝐀𝐮 decided it was better to move to a quieter street to continue their conversation. Oh, I can see why you might be stronger than a chicken but smarter. Not sure about that. The small bird child makes an offended gasp. I'm smart. Oh, if that's the case, then was 7 plus 3. 𝐀𝐮 continued to pester her little brother. However, the confident smirk 𝐀𝐮 displayed to her question threw 𝐀𝐮 off. 10. Come on, you think I'm that stupid, sis? Pops made sure to teach me my maths when it was just him and me. 𝐀𝐮's cheeky laugh is what broke 𝐀𝐮 out of her momentary surprise. What followed was the usual pinch of the cheek. Eventually, the duo made it to a much more open area with trees surrounded by benches all over the place. Taking a seat in one, they continued to eat their skewers and watch the people pass them. Well, it's a good thing Pops was teaching you math. With how we are right now, you might not be able to go to school. 𝐀𝐮 tilts his head to the side while 𝐀𝐮 talks. Why do I need to go to school? 𝐀𝐮 pauses for a second to come up with an answer. Her time in a normal school was very brief before she was taken away by the commission. So you can make friends your age and you get to learn things like math, English, and history. But what's the point of learning it if I'm never gonna use it? 𝐀𝐮 counters with his hands on his hips. So you don't want to learn how to write proper sentences. How are you gonna write Pops cards when you're far away? 𝐀𝐮 smirks in amusement as 𝐀𝐮 seems to stop and try to come up with a response. I'm gonna make you write them. Her amusement quickly fades. What do you mean you're gonna make me? Seeing where this was going, 𝐀𝐮 quickly gets off the bench and sprints away with 𝐀𝐮 in hot pursuit. While running, 𝐀𝐮 looks behind him to see where his sister was, which ended up being a mistake as his body suddenly collided with someone else. Both made a sound of pain and fell on the ground with 𝐀𝐮 quickly closing the distance. She helps her brother up from the ground, making sure he's okay, before looking towards the woman 𝐀𝐮 knocked over. The woman was wearing a pale purple blouse with frilled cuffs, with the collar upturned, and a pearl string necklace of a similar color. Over that was a short, navy blue dress with a collar so low it dips all the way down to her waist, as well as a thick brown belt that's fastened in 3 places around her waist. She also was wearing dark red gloves and frilled, thigh-high socks of a purple color, a pair of black boots with knee-high protrusions worn over the top, with 2 bands of red binding them to her calves around the back. Though her attire did look a bit scuffed up. However, that wasn't the most striking thing about her. That would be her long, shiny red hair, which seemed to gleam in the lights that bathed their surroundings. It made 𝐀𝐮 feel a bit jealous. Snapping out of her thoughts, 𝐀𝐮 quickly extended her hand to help the woman. I'm so sorry about my little brother. The woman grabbed her hand and pulled herself up. No worries. Kids will be kids. The woman smiled at the siblings, yet both could tell it was somewhat forced. This made 𝐀𝐮 feel guilty for bumping into the woman, who seems to not be as happy as the other people around them. I'm sorry for bumping into you. You have appealing hair. At the mention of her hair, the woman seems to brighten up immediately, and even her blue eyes begin to sparkle before dimming. Oh, where are my manners? I'm Karuka Hasaki. Nice to meet you too. It's at this moment that 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 begins to slightly panic. Even though she looks different from when she was arrested, the commission would have told the news to warn people of her, which means they would have revealed her real name. Soon enough an idea came to her. Nice to meet you too. I'm 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 and this is my little brother 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫. 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐴's wings flapped at him, being referred to as 𝐻𝐿𝐴𝐻. Huh, that's a strange last name. Kiruka raises an eyebrow and observes the siblings. What's wrong with 𝐻𝐿𝐴𝐻? That's our pop's last name and he's the coolest. You got a problem with that? Almost immediately 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 becomes defensive, with 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 freaking out, trying to shut 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 up and not make them look suspicious. Quickly seeing the mistake she made, Kiruka quickly moves to fix it. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to offend you. Don't leave. The last part seemed to slip out of her mouth, causing all three to stop and stare at one another in an awkward silence. Sorry. I'm not having my best New Year's at the moment. Looking sheepish, Kiruka looks away as her gloved hand rubs her sleeves. I'm sorry to hear that. Come sit with us. 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 suggests as the group of three move back to the bench. If you don't mind me asking what happened. Kiruka seemed to hesitate for a bit while sending glances at 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫, debating on whether to let the small child hear as well. My boyfriend broke up with me just this afternoon. 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 is left speechless while 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 wasn't fully understanding what was said. Why did he do that? 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 innocently asks, and Kiruka becomes somewhat fidgety. He was afraid of my quirk. Kiruka answers plainly. But 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫's gold eyes bore into her dulling blue. Because never mind. She seemed to shut down the conversation. Is that why you were walking around alone? At the question, Kiruka winces. 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 quickly turns to her brother in shock. Yet 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 continues to press on. Shouldn't you be with your family during New Year's? At that, the red-haired woman's blue eyes turn into a familiar hollow look before the red hair hides them. I can't tell this kid they want nothing to do with me. They live far away so they couldn't join me. The answer was painfully forced along with the smile. I'm so sorry about my brother. He's never like this. However, 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 knows that the last part is a lie. He's acting just like when I met him the first time. Before anyone can dwell on further thoughts, 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 speaks up. Well, if you got no one, then come be with us. 𝐀𝐮𝐴 once again turns to face her brother so fast she almost gets whiplash while Kiruka's face morphs into surprise. I know we just met, but you shouldn't be alone during New Year's. If Pops was here he would probably invite you too, so I'm inviting you before he does. Before 𝐀𝐮𝐴 can start another round of apologizing, Kiruka interrupts her. It's fine. Your brother is very free-spirited. But I don't want to intrude on your time. I already unloaded my problems earlier on you guys. No, it's fine. You can stay with us if you would like. I'm sorry again about 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫. 𝐀𝐮𝐴 interjects. Kiruka lets a small smile show on her face. You know, when you guys first introduced yourselves, I thought you were the mother 𝐀𝐮𝐴. Is it alright to call you 𝐀𝐮𝐴? 𝐀𝐮𝐴 almost chokes on her saliva while 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫's eyes almost popped out of their sockets. Yeah, you can call me 𝐀𝐮𝐴 and my brother 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫. 𝐀𝐮𝐴 responded after a coughing fit at being considered 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫's mother. Besides, sis can never be my mom. Pops is too big for her. It's only years later that 𝐀𝐮𝐴 will understand why both women blushed heavily at that. As the three talked, time seemed to slip away, with the night sky becoming darker as January 1st approached minute by minute. Seems it's time to start trying to find Pops. 𝐀𝐮𝐴 tells 𝐀𝐮𝐭, who was busy talking with Kiruka about the color red. However, the mention of Pops seemed to snap the young boy out of the conversation. Okay, let's go. 𝐀𝐮𝐴 immediately jumps off the bench and starts strutting away in a random direction. However, he stops, turns around, walks back to the two 20-year-old females, grabs their hands and starts trying to drag them both. The two mentioned females giggle before standing up. Well, guess I better get going myself since you two are leaving. 𝐀𝐮𝐴 stops trying to pull the two when he hears Kiruka's words. Come with us. I want you to meet Pops. The young boy's excitement about his father figure is palpable, yet Kiruka is still hesitant. Are you sure? This time it's 𝐀𝐮𝐴 who speaks up. Of course. He'll love you as a daughter no matter how you look or what your quirk is. Alright, if you say so. Kiruka finally relaxes. If you guys are done, I want to see Pops again. Both look down at the winged boy who looks up at them impatiently. 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 lets out a sigh before picking up the boy and telling their new friend to follow her. She immediately goes into the alleyways and starts to glide across them looking for any forest of white hair peeking over the buildings. After searching for a couple of minutes, she eventually found her Pops and started heading in his direction. They turned a corner and found Pops with 𝐶𝐲𝐸 on his shoulder looking at the crowd with some wolfman standing on a building beside them doing the same. It's then that 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 decided to announce their presence. Pops. 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 quickly turns around to the yell to see 3 new individuals. He reflexively tenses getting ready to flee. 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 stretches his wings, before flying out of 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫's grip and onto his favorite perch being 𝐻𝐻𝐿𝐴𝐻𝐻's shoulder. When he gets there he greets his newest brother. 𝐾𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 meanwhile is still stunned silent as she stares at the man who towers over buildings and suddenly understands what 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 really meant. 𝐀𝐮, seeing her new friend unresponsive, takes her by the hand and starts walking closer to 𝐻𝐻𝐿𝐴𝐻𝐻. Seeing his daughter approach him, 𝐻𝐻𝐿𝐴𝐻𝐻 lowers down a hand which the 2 women use as an elevator which puts them on the same building as 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫. Seems this new year has been fun for you too. 𝐻𝐻𝐿𝐴𝐻𝐻 speaks up in hopes of starting a conversation. 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 turns back to face his Pops as a big grin begins to form. Yeah, I had so much fun. Sis took me. And as a child would, 𝐀𝐮𝐿𝐴𝐻𝐻 began describing every detail of his adventure with all those present listening in. That included 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 who slowly lowered his guard when he realized this wasn't some ambush. He loosely followed along with the kids retelling while chewing on the cigar, though he did pick up on when the redhead close to him mentioned that people were scared of her quirk. That worked to lower his guard further. Speaking of 𝐾𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫, she eventually got her mind together but kept looking between 𝐻𝐻𝐿𝐴𝐻𝐻 and 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 who noticed. What's the matter? 𝐀𝐮𝐴 turned to face the redhead while crossing her arms under her bust. You didn't tell me your dad is several stories tall. 𝐾𝐮𝐿𝐴𝐻𝐻 whisper shouted as to not interrupt 𝐀𝐮𝐿𝐴𝐻𝐻. Well, you didn't ask. 𝐀𝐮𝐴 responded with a smirk which annoyed 𝐾𝐮𝐿𝐴𝐻𝐻. However, before she could open her mouth someone interrupted. So you're the 𝐾𝐮𝐿𝐴𝐻𝐻 Hasaki my son has been telling me about. The rumbling voice of 𝐻𝐻𝐿𝐴𝐻𝐻 made her entire body shake as 𝐾𝐮𝐿𝐴𝐻𝐻 slowly turned her body to face the massive man. However, what she didn't expect was for the man to be smiling at her. I don't think I need to say that 𝐀𝐮𝐿𝐴𝐻𝐻 likes you a lot. Also, apologies for not introducing myself sooner. The name is Edward 𝐻𝐻𝐻. You can call me either. Thank you Mr. 𝐻𝐻𝐻. It's nice to meet you in person. 𝐾𝐮𝐿𝐴𝐻𝐻 stutters out with 𝐀𝐮𝐿𝐴𝐻𝐻 snorting in his corner. Please, don't call me mister. It makes me feel old and I'm not married nor do I plan to be. 𝐻𝐻𝐻 responds with his signature smirk that lacks a mustache to complete it. Also don't be so tense. You're surrounded by family. At that 𝐾𝐮𝐻𝐻 seems to relax a bit as she turns to 𝐾𝐮 for silent approval and receiving a nod. It's during these conversations that 𝐶𝐲𝐻𝐻 moves off of his Pop's shoulder and ends up next to 𝐀𝐮𝐻𝐻. What do you want, kid? 𝐀𝐮𝐻𝐻's 6 feet 10 inches frame seems to tower over 𝐶𝐲𝐻𝐻, though the latter doesn't seem intimidated. You just seemed separated from us, so I wanted to change that. The two then look at 𝐾𝐮𝐻𝐻 and 𝐻𝐻𝐻, who seem to be in a discussion with 𝐀𝐮𝐻𝐻, hearing something about 𝐾𝐮𝐻𝐻 being a teacher and willing to help the small brat. And how do you plan to include me? 𝐀𝐮𝐻𝐻 questioned, looking down at the small white-haired teen. What is your New Year's wish? When 𝐶𝐲𝐻𝐻 asked this, the others seemed to quiet down to listen. You can't be serious. Those are stupid, they aren't even gonna happen. 𝐀𝐮𝐻𝐻 simply scoffs and continues to move the cigar around his jaw. I thought the same thing, yet mine came true. The Wind Wizard casts a look at 𝐻𝐻𝐻. This is so stupid. Fine. I wish to be accepted for what I am. 𝐀𝐮𝐻𝐻 takes his cigar in his hands as he turns to face 𝐶𝐲𝐻𝐻, who simply continues to stare in 𝐻𝐻𝐻's direction. Happy? Not quite. Satisfied. 𝐀𝐮𝐻𝐻, it's your turn. What do you wish for this new year? The amusement in the usually bland voice was easy to spot. We get to make wishes. If that's the case, I wish to have multiple quirks. But wait, no. I wish to have lots of money so then me, sis, 𝐶𝐲𝐻 and Pops can live better. Yeah, that's the one I want. Sis, it's your turn. Everyone was staring at the small boy in amusement at his antics before he turns to face 𝐀𝐮. Omi. I guess I just wish to stay with the family that stayed with me when I needed it most. 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 seemed to get a fond smile as she looked at 𝐻𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 and 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫. She then turns to her recently made friend, 𝐾𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐴, what is your wish? 𝐾𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐴 seems to start thinking, moving her head up to look at the stars as she ponders. Eventually she looks back at everyone when she begins to talk. My wish would be that I can be the best teacher I can be for 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐴 and the kids at the school I'll be working at soon. Her red hair sways and catches some of the bright lights from the street below. Tell us your dream, 𝐻𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐴. 𝐻𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐴 chuckles as the baton gets passed to him. What my wish is? He lets the noise of the crowds echo in the alleyway they all found themselves standing around. My wish is to be the best father I can be for my children now and those who come in the future. 𝐻𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐴 seems to stare off into the distance as he finishes. After a bit of time he looks down at his remaining son. 𝐶𝐮𝐭𝐴, my son, what is it that you wish for? As the question gets passed to him, 𝐶𝐮𝐴 hums for a bit, filling in any silence with it. My wish. My wish is more of a dream that was inspired today. 𝐶𝐮𝐴 turns away from everyone and looks at the sprawling city of Nagoya. I dream of a world where one isn't judged based on their quirk. I dream of a world where no one is forced by circumstance to do evil. As he was talking, the people below started launching fireworks that exploded high above, covering everything under it in its light. Soon enough the sky seemed alight with fire and color greater than the masses of people. And finally, the clock struck midnight and everyone across Japan heard the sounds of bells ringing from their local shrines. The sound of them reverberates across the hearts of millions, promising to grant their wishes and desires. I dream of a world where there are no heroes or villains. I dream of a world where we see one another as people. That is my wish. The bells and fireworks continued unimpeded, not disturbed by the words just uttered. Light floods the faces of those on the roof, with the only exception being 𝐶𝐮𝐴 himself, who has his face covered in shadow. An occasional explosion breaks up the silence as those around 𝐶𝐮𝐴 try to process his words. His eyes travel to each occupant on the roof. Chojuro has his maw opened and the cigar loosely hanging on between the man's teeth. Karuka had her eyes widen, her hair seemed to shine with her surprise. 𝐀𝐮𝐴 studied the boy in front of her. The brat, as she called him, who could have hurt 𝐻𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐴 in their first encounter. However, his words struck a chord deep inside her. The part that led her down this path of escape. 𝐾𝐮𝐴's eyes sparkled with the fireworks overhead, only adding to the effect. The idea of such a world seemed right to 𝐾𝐮𝐴. In such a world, people would be able to spend more time with their loved ones instead of living in fear or hoping a hero will eventually save them. The smile 𝐾𝐮𝐴 sent his brother's way made 𝐶𝐮𝐴 have his own smirk on his otherwise monotone face. Finally, 𝐶𝐮𝐴 looked at the man whose very existence was the reason for his new dream. 𝐻𝐮𝐴 took the moment to make eye contact with his son. It's then 𝐶𝐮𝐴 felt the pride and encouragement he has never received throughout his life flood into him through the green eyes that stared into his gray. With the nod from 𝐻𝐮𝐴 being the final straw that finally released a smile on 𝐶𝐮𝐴's normally inexpressive face. Finally turning around to the people below, the group of 6 stood in silence, listening to explosions which destroy the heavens, bells that quake the waves, and the public's cheers that rumbled the earth. After close to an eternity, the bells stopped ringing and the fireworks seemed to have calmed, yet people seemed to still be on the streets. A yawn interrupted their silence. All parties looked at the source only to find 𝐾𝐮𝐴 attempting to get comfortable on his pop's shoulder. Taking that as a cue, Karuka speaks up. It is pretty late in the night. I'm surprised the sport was able to stay awake for so long. She paused before continuing. But I think it's time I go home myself. It's been very enjoyable with you all. She nods to 𝐻𝐮𝐴, who nods back in acknowledgement. No, stay with you. 𝐾𝐮𝐴's speech was slurred as he slowly started to drift to sleep, with both women chuckling to themselves. 𝐻𝐮𝐴 smiled fondly and rubbed one of his fingers over his son's body, sending him into the land of dreams. My daughter has given you the address to the warehouse we are staying in, correct? 𝐻𝐮𝐴 looks over with the ladies, silencing their giggles immediately. Yes, I have it. I hope to meet you in the next couple of days. A massive smile stretches across 𝐻𝐮𝐴's face that bends the freckles on his face. I thank you again for doing this even when we can't pay you. Kiruka looks away and pushes her hair out of her face. Getting to teach that little boy is payment enough. He has a lot of potential and I don't want it to go to waste just because of your circumstances. Kiruka then talked with 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 for a bit before sharing goodbyes with everyone who was still awake. 𝗏𝐬𝐽𝐽 lifted his palm up to her before bringing it to the ground with her in tow. As the darkness covers her, another occupant of the roof speaks up. Dumb move giving away your place's location. 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 comments with his arms crossed. And why would that be? 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 quickly jumps in to defend her friend. Because she could easily report you to the heroes. Betray you to get a better standing. 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 continues exhaling a large puff of smoke. The flinch 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 has at the mention of heroes doesn't go unnoticed. Before 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 can let out an outburst, 𝗏𝐬𝐽𝐽 interrupts her. There is no reason to argue. I can tell her feelings are genuine in her wish to help. Besides, I can fight off any heroes that come our way. 𝗏𝐬𝐽𝐽's green eyes stare into yellow before 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 scoffs. Fine. It's your problem anyway. I'm taking my leave. With that, the chimera runs across the roof and jumps to the adjacent one until his figure becomes one with the darkness just like Kiruka. 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 releases a huff to show her frustrations before turning to 𝗏𝐬𝐽𝐽. 𝐶𝐲 simply continued to stare in the direction 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 retreated to. It was only the sudden presence of 𝗏𝐬𝐽𝐽's hand beside him that snapped him back. Turning around, he's met with 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 sitting in the open palm beckoning him to join her. It didn't take long for 𝐂𝐮𝐽𝐽 to crawl next to his sister and 𝗏𝐬𝐽𝐽 to begin moving back to their home. The walk back was mostly filled with stillness with only 𝗏𝐽𝐽's footsteps giving any kind of meaningful noise. Don't judge him too harshly. 𝐂𝐮𝐽𝐽 suddenly speaks up. 𝐀𝐮𝐴 turns to him. I know. Life most likely hasn't been far to him. Still doesn't mean he has to be rude about it. 𝐀𝐮𝐴 crosses her arms. With that last remark, the two get lost in their own thoughts. 𝗏𝐽𝐽𝐽 simply continued moving forward, trapped in his own thoughts of the future. I'll save them. Both of them. Several days later, 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 was busy training his quirk by having his feathers lift up heavy crates. 𝗏𝐽𝐽𝐽 himself was exercising with 𝐀𝐮𝐴 doing her own stretches on his back. 𝗀𝐼 meanwhile was enjoying the breeze he felt on one of the crates 𝐀𝐮𝐽𝐽 was lifting. This is how they spent their days. With nowhere to go without being hunted and finding food and water being the only real issue. All they could do was exercise to pass the time. However, today something interrupted their usual routine. A knock on the warehouse door took away 𝗀𝐽𝐽's attention, causing 𝐂𝐮𝐽𝐽 to go into a sudden free fall. Before he could begin to panic, 𝗏𝐬𝐽𝐽 was already there to catch him. 𝗀𝐽𝐽 seemed to realize what he just caused and looked away sheepishly. Sorry about that, 𝐂𝐮. You almost... Wait, did you just call me 𝗀𝐮? His previous agitation changes to confusion. He heard 𝐀𝐮𝐴 giggle from over 𝗏𝐽𝐽𝐽's shoulder but didn't feel like turning around. Well yeah. Your name is kinda hard to say every time. 𝗀𝐽𝐽 answers unashamed. 𝗀𝐼 made sure to level his little brother with an unamused look which seemed to grow with 𝗀𝐮𝐴's giggles. But don't worry. When I get more siblings, sis will also get a nickname. That quickly put a stop to the giggling and 𝗂𝐽𝐽 allowed a small smirk to grace his face. The knock came again with 𝗏𝐽𝐽𝐽 putting 𝗂𝐽𝐽 down before going to the door. What greeted them was a woman with dazzling red hair. She was wearing more casual clothes and had a big bag over her shoulder. Kiruka! 𝗀𝐽𝐽 excitedly shouted as he rushed into her arms. Well, someone sure is excited. Kiruka chuckles as she puts down the chirping 𝗀𝐽𝐽 back on the ground. It's good to see you again, Kiruka. I was starting to think you would show up. Looking up, Kiruka saw 𝗀𝐮𝐴 sliding down 𝗏𝐽𝐽's body like a professional. Of course I would come. It was my New Year wish. She winks at 𝗂𝐽𝐽, who gives her a nod. Well, in that case, let's get you set up. 𝗀𝐮𝐴 then turns around and brings over a table and a few chairs which they managed to acquire. Kiruka started to move towards the chair, followed by a confused 𝗀𝐽𝐽. What's all this for? Are we having lunch early today? The woman chuckled to themselves while 𝗂𝐽𝐽 could only sigh. Kiruka sits down at one of the chairs while 𝗀𝐮𝐴 makes 𝗀𝐽𝐽 sit in the chair across from her. I'm going to be teaching you just like if you were in school. This is also like my practice before I start working. To emphasize her point, Kiruka takes out several lined paper along with pencils from the bag she was carrying and puts it in front of 𝗀𝐽𝐽. 𝗀𝗽𝐽 visibly deflated and sank into his chair. Wait, So you didn't come here just to see us again? The depression in his voice was clear to everyone there. 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 went to pinch her brother's cheek. Weren't you listening when we talked about getting you a teacher during New Year's? However, her attempts were blocked by 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫. Well, I didn't think it would actually happen. 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 mopped. Oh, come on, it's not gonna be that bad. Karuka tries to cheer 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 up, pulling out a book and opening it for 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 to see. It had several kanji he didn't recognize. I'm just gonna teach you how to read and write. 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 stared at the book blankly before turning to his pops for help. However, as soon as he saw the amused expression on 𝐻𝐽𝐻's face, he knew he wasn't getting any help. Turning back, he faced Karuka. Why do I have to learn this, Karuka? 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 whined. However, Karuka was having none of that. I am no Karuka. You will call me Hasaki-sensei when I'm teaching you. And you must learn this because it'll help you get a job. Why should I go get a job, Karuka? I mean Hasaki-sensei. 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 questioned. Well, you want to get money for your family, right? Karuka receives a nod from 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫. Well, to get money you need to get a job, but you aren't going to get a job if you don't know how to read and write. So let's get to work. So turning back to face the book and the paper, 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 silently cried to himself as he started listening to Karuka's instructions. 𝐀𝐮𝐴 simply watched 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 learning when her eye caught movement. She turned to see her pops gesturing for her and 𝐶𝐲𝐽 to come closer to him. I'm gonna go and get us more food. You guys stay here to make sure everything goes okay. 𝐻𝐽𝐻 says when his two children are close enough. Shouldn't at least one of us go with you? 𝐀𝐮𝐴 suggests, but 𝐻𝐽𝐻 shakes his head. Don't worry, I'll be fine. 𝐻𝐽𝐻 gives a gentle smile to calm down 𝐀𝐮𝐴's worries. He then gets up and makes his way out of the warehouse. Even after several days, some people are still celebrating the New Year's. Food was abundant, but Izuku knew it was all but easy to get. If there is anything he learned, it's that the public is like sheep. They believe whatever the shepherd tells them, which in this case, the shepherd is the Hero Commission. And since the Hero Commission paints those like his children and himself as threats, the public will believe so as well. That is the reason why Izuku searches for a more isolated food vendor or truck. However, he finds himself stopping to look out of the alleyway to the happy families just outside it. He didn't feel any jealousy towards them, no. He felt longing to be able to walk out in the open just like them. No fear of persecution and being able to live his life in peace. In that regard, he understood Chojuro's wish. Izuku simply shakes his head and continues moving. It didn't take long before he found a K truck loaded with different crates full of fruits and vegetables. Besides the truck, unloaded on the side were more crates. After further investigation, Izuku concluded that the crates were filled with meat along with ice to keep it cold. This was a gold mine if not for the fact many people were surrounding the two people selling the produce. Not only that, but someone seemed to have also found the truck and was hanging off the fire escape of one of the buildings in the alleyway Izuku found himself in. However, Izuku quickly recognized who it was due to the person's dreads and alligator-like tail. Didn't expect to see you again so soon. Chojuro tensed and quickly turned around getting ready to fight before seeing 𝐻𝐽𝐻's large frame. How the F are you so silent? A walking building shouldn't be this quiet. Chojuro growled out before evening out his breath from the scare he just received. While doing so, 𝐻𝐽𝐻 noticed small amounts of fire escaping the chimera's mouth. I'm guessing you're here for the same reason as me. 𝐻𝐽𝐻 looks past Chojuro to the vendors who had all their produce closer to the alleyway than they were themselves. You can say that. Chojuro also turned to stare at the crowd with silence descending over the two. It's only after several minutes that Chojuro speaks up again. I can't take all of this and get away at the same time by myself. Do you want me to help you? 𝐻𝐽𝐻 turns to face the back of the wolfman who turns around to face him as well. Chojuro seemed to hesitate and sounded like he had to force the answer out of his mouth. 𝐻𝐽𝐻 decided not to question him on it, though he already had his suspicions. So, do you have an idea in mind? Chojuro looked away from 𝐻𝐽𝐻. Not yet. The two continued to study the crowd. How big of a flame can you produce? 𝐻𝐽𝐻 questions suddenly with Chojuro raising an eye. Why do you want to know that? Chojuro turns around once again. 𝐻𝐽𝐻 makes eye contact with Chojuro's golden eyes. If you can make a big enough flame, It should distract everyone long enough for me to grab everything. And what's in it for me? We can decide on that when we get away. How do I know you aren't just gonna take all the food for yourself? Because you helped me get it. It would only be fair. Their stare down continues until 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 scoffs and looks away. I'll be on top of this building. 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫's bird-like hand points up the fire escape. I can only maintain my fire breath for a couple of seconds, so you better be quick. With his talking done, 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 quickly makes his way up the fire escape and onto the building. Once there, he debates with himself on whether to just leave 𝐻𝐻𝐽𝐻 down there. I could probably find a much easier place to take from. No need to trust someone else. However, as he got ready to jump away from the building, he stopped himself. Flashes of the New Year's night flashed in his mind. But he isn't just doing this for himself. His mind continued to supply him with the people 𝐻𝐻𝐽𝐻 called his children. 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 grinded his teeth together. Fine, I'll give this guy a chance. Walking back to the ledge closer to the people, 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 took a deep breath before releasing it. On the ground, the civilians were busy crowding around the vendors when a bright orange flash grabbed their attention. Everyone looked up only to wince or cover their face from the orange fire that blocked out the sun. The heat reached them immediately, and even though it was in the middle of winter, the cold everyone felt disappeared immediately. However, the fire didn't last long, as it seemed to suddenly shrivel and end abruptly. It took a couple of seconds for people to recuperate, but by then it was too late. 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 didn't even run through all his air before 𝐻𝐻𝐽𝐻 grabbed him and started running. Feeling himself in between massive fingers, 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 looks around. The first thing he noticed, other than his surroundings turning into a blur, was that he was indeed held between 𝐻𝐻𝐽𝐻's index and thumb, while several crates occupied the rest of that hand. On 𝐻𝐻𝐽𝐻's other hand, he saw the K truck sitting in his palm, being held down by massive fingers so it wouldn't fall out. Turning fully to face 𝐻𝐻𝐽𝐻, 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 was glad he hadn't put a cigar in his mouth, since he was sure it would have fallen out from how wide his jaw was. 𝐻𝐻𝐽𝐻 felt the chimera's stare and simply looked towards him. You thought I would abandon you? 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐻 involuntarily nods his head and receives a chuckle from 𝐻𝐻𝐽𝐻. I wouldn't abandon one of my sons, now would I? A daze settled upon 𝐀𝐮𝐻's eyes as the wind continued to flow by him. His ears rang and his mind was going blank as a feeling of comfort flooded through his body. Did he just call me one of his sons? However, that feeling of comfort faded quickly to self-loathing and rage. What did you just say? 𝐀𝐮𝐻 screamed up at the man holding him with his fingers. 𝐻𝐻𝐽𝐻 simply continued to look at him as 𝐀𝐮𝐻 violently jerked around, trying to escape 𝐻𝐻𝐽𝐻's grip. I will never abandon a child of mine, that includes you. That only agitated 𝐀𝐮𝐻 further. I'm not one of your sons. I'll never be one of your sons. 𝐀𝐮𝐻 roared, which was heard several blocks away. 𝐻𝐻𝐽𝐻 didn't stop running though, so as to not let himself and his not yet son get caught. He did, however, take a different direction and started moving away from the warehouse. And what makes you say that? 𝐻𝐻𝐽𝐻's voice comes out gruff and aggressive to 𝐀𝐮𝐻's agitated mind, even if that wasn't his intention. I won't allow myself to be controlled like the others that follow you. 𝐀𝐮𝐻's struggles intensifies as his mind tries its best to make logic of 𝐻𝐻𝐽𝐻's kindness. There is no way he's not deceiving the others. He's lying to them all. Why else would he want me? 𝐀𝐮𝐻 continues down this path of reasoning, with 𝐻𝐻𝐽𝐻 noticing the chimera's body start to change and slowly grow. Why would I want or need to control you or my other children? It serves me no benefit. He doesn't get to finish as a massive tail slams his hand, causing him to drop 𝐀𝐮𝐻 and the other crates. 𝐀𝐮𝐻 lands on the floor and jumps back with his now massive tail swinging behind him. If that's the case, 𝐻𝐻𝐽𝐻 observed how the once 6 feet 10 inches wolf man began to grow in size rapidly. First, his chest and legs bulged, tearing through his dress shirt and trench coat, but not his jeans. The bird-like legs also bulged before enlarging, causing an imprint on the ground. Blue feathers seemed to painfully sprout from the forearms, along with horns starting to appear on 𝐀𝐮𝐻's head. His white fur also spread more across his chest. Then why would you accept a monster like me? 𝐀𝐮𝐻 finished his sentence with a primal roar that generated a gust of wind. Windows shattered, car alarms started blaring, and 𝐻𝐻𝐽𝐻 picked up the screams of civilians. 𝐻𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 squinted at the transformed 𝐀𝐮_ğ, who now stood at a height of 13 feet 8 inches, and stared into his hollow blank yellow eyes. The eyes of an uncontrollable beast to many, but to 𝐻𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨 it was the eyes of a lost child in need of his help. However, helping 𝐀𝐮_ğ is a lot harder, especially when he starts to charge a beam of ominous light. Before the beam does fire, 𝐻𝐻𝐭𝐡𝐨 uses his free hand to slam the air in front of him. Cracks quickly erupt in front of him that manage to cover his entire frame. 𝐀𝐮_ğ then releases his laser that when hitting the cracks refracts around 𝐻𝐻𝐭𝐡𝐴. 𝐻𝐻𝐭𝐡𝐴 grunts as he gets slightly pushed back. This struggle lasts for several long seconds before the beam dies down. As soon as the sound of the cracks and laser beam leaves 𝐻𝐻𝐭𝐡𝐴's ears, they are greeted with the crackling sound of fire, the crumble of buildings, and blood-wrenching screams of people. Izuku would have cared for those people, but 𝐻𝐻𝐭𝐡𝐴 only focused on the beast in front of him. 𝐀𝐮_ğ, you don't have to do this. I don't get what you're trying to prove. Yelling out over the now hell-like landscape, 𝐀𝐮_ğ only responds with a reverberating roar before charging the giant man. Quickly throwing the K truck out of his other hand, 𝐻𝐻𝐭𝐡𝐴 bends his knees to be able to stop the charge. Without any hesitation, 𝐀𝐮_ğ punches forward with his massive eagle talon hands. 𝐻𝐻𝐭𝐡𝐴 easily catches it in his palm with the collision, releasing a shockwave. Soon enough, 𝐀𝐮_ğ uses his other hand with little success. I don't want to hurt you. 𝐻𝐻𝐭𝐡𝐴 tries once again to reason with 𝐀𝐮_ğ, but all he receives is a snarl before another beam begins to be changed in his mouth. His eyes widening, 𝐻𝐻𝐴 throws 𝐀𝐮_ğ back, causing him to start flying back. However, his massive tail wrapped around 𝐻𝐻𝐴's right hand. It pulls back, causing 𝐻𝐻𝐴 to lose balance for a small second and allowed 𝐀𝐮_ğ to land on his feet, using 𝐻𝐻𝐴 to pull himself closer. As he landed back in front of 𝐻𝐻𝐴, 𝐀𝐮_ğ fired the beam he was charging at 𝐻𝐻𝐴's head. Not having time to activate his quirk, 𝐻𝐻𝐴 could only raise up his left hand to block the beam. 𝐻𝐻𝐴 resisted the urge to make a noise of pain other than a grunt as he felt his left hand begin to burn. Before his hand could fully cook, 𝐻𝐻𝐴 activated his quirk, creating a small white sphere around his fist which exploded into cracks, preventing his hand from getting charred any further. Soon enough, the beam ended once again and 𝐀𝐮_ğ was on the offensive. Not giving 𝐻𝐻𝐴 time to breathe, 𝐀𝐮_ğ lunged at the giant man in an attempt to claw at his chest. With reflexes even 𝐻𝐻𝐴 wasn't sure where he got from, he managed to dodge the first few slashes by backpedaling. However, due to Izuku's inexperience with combat in his new size, 𝐀𝐮_ğ's talons eventually found purchase. A long scratch appears on 𝐻𝐻𝐴's chest with the slash even taking bits of light green flannel. It didn't hit anything vital, yet it started bleeding immediately. 𝐀𝐮_ğ seemed to stop for some reason, yet it was enough time for 𝐻𝐻𝐴 to send a shockwave at the chimera with his non-injured hand. 𝐻𝐻𝐴 had no intention to harm 𝐀𝐮_ğ, so the shockwave only sent him about 50 feet back without giving the beast any major injuries. Choosing to ignore, in his terms, a scratch, 𝐻𝐻𝐴 continued to stare at 𝐀𝐮_ğ. 𝐀𝐮_ğ, upon recovering, looked at 𝐻𝐻𝐴 before his jaw seemed to spread into a vicious smirk. See? The distorted animalistic voice of 𝐀𝐮_ğ echoed through the ruins created by his beams. 𝐻𝐻𝐴 was 100% sure heroes were already running to the scene. Monster! 𝐀𝐮_ğ then pointed one of his talons back at himself. So you say you are a monster? 𝐻𝐻𝐴's face seemed to darken. Then I'll just have to show you how I treat monsters. Upon hearing those words, 𝐀𝐮_ğ's face changed to one of hopelessness. I was right. He is like all the others. Why did I even give him a chance? Anger suddenly flooded 𝐀𝐮_ğ as he let loose another roar, with only 𝐻𝐻𝐴 hearing the pain and suffering behind it. Another beam began charging inside of the chimera's mouth. However, 𝐻𝐻𝐴 was not idle. He started running towards 𝐀𝐮_ğ. Before he can reach 𝐀𝐮_ğ, the beast releases the red beam. This time, being more prepared, 𝐻𝐻𝐴 sends a shockwave at the beam, with it overpowering the beam. 𝐀𝐮_ğ's eyes widen as he increases the power of his laser to stop the shockwave from advancing. Eventually, the beam and shockwave dissipated right before hitting 𝐀𝐮_ğ, which gave 𝐻𝐻𝐴 enough time to get close. 𝐀𝐮_ğ looked up at the towering body of 𝐻𝐻𝐴. With the fire all around them, 𝐻𝐻𝐴's face and chest were partly shadowed, not allowing 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 to read the giant man's expression. 𝐻𝐿gate's burnt left hand was already pulled back, and it's then that 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 began to question if choosing to fight this man was a good idea. However, not having any other choice, 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 pulled back his left hand to meet the punch. For the two combatants, time seemed to slow before their attacks were let loose on one another. A great shockwave of wind was released which flew into the sky. 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫's fist which released the gust was held straight and unmoving. It went over 𝐻𝐿gate's left shoulder, barely missing his neck, since at the last second 𝐻𝐿gate dropped to his left knee. 𝐻𝐿gate's left arm tightened its hold on 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫's body as 𝐀𝐮𝐭o𝐡𝐨𝐫 himself finally processed the fact he was being hugged. "I don't care if you're a man or a monster. You are my son, and that's all that matters." A silence seemed to descend on the two as the sound of distant ambulances and yells along with the fire around them being the only sound present. 𝐀𝐮𝐭o𝐡𝐨𝐫 stood still in his monstrous form, trying in vain to deny the words said to him. With that failing, he resorted to the only thing that worked in the past: violence. Slowly pulling back his left arm to his side, 𝐀𝐮𝐭o𝐡𝐨𝐫 roared before punching into 𝐻𝐿gate's gut. Yet he didn't let go of the hug. Another punch followed soon after, and all 𝐀𝐮𝐭o𝐡𝐨𝐫 received was a grunt from 𝐻𝐿gate. His teeth grinding together, 𝐀𝐮𝐭o𝐡𝐨𝐫 proceeded to repeatedly unload gut punch after gut punch in hopes of 𝐻𝐿gate letting go. Yet 𝐻𝐿gate persisted. Even when blood began to pour from his lips, he only tightened his hug. "No matter how many times you hurt me, I'll still love you all the same." At those words, 𝐀𝐮𝐭o𝐡𝐨𝐫's onslaught began to slow down, with each punch having less force behind the last one, until the talons simply touched 𝐻𝐿gate's heavily bruised midsection and slid off. Finally accepting the embrace for what it is, and with him being emotionally fatigued, 𝐀𝐮𝐭o𝐡𝐨𝐫 wasn't able to hold up his monstrous form. His horns slowly began to shrink and go back into his head along with the rest of his body until he looked as he did before, only without any clothes for his upper body. Picking up 𝐀𝐮𝐭o𝐡𝐨𝐫 in his palm, 𝐻𝐿gate gave him a smirk before holding him to his chest. "Rest, my son, we can talk more later." Not having any more energy to argue, 𝐀𝐮𝐭o𝐡𝐨𝐫 fell asleep, feeling safe with someone else for the first time in a very long time. 𝐻𝐿gate enjoyed the moment with his new son as he let himself relax. Freeze villain. That moment of calm did not last long as 𝐻𝐿gate spotted three heroes arriving out of the corner of his eye behind him. He didn't say anything and remained kneeling, making sure to cover the body of his new son. "Are you the cause of all this? What kind of monster are you?" One of the heroes yelled out as 𝐻𝐿gate observed how tense they were. He knew that killing them would be easy, but all it did was bring more attention which he didn't need at the moment. It is pointless to endanger his family. Leave. Without turning to face them, 𝐻𝐿gate spoke, hoping to end this in an as peaceful way as possible. "Why would we do that? It's our job to bring in villains like you." The last hero spoke up. "Besides, it's 3 against 1 and our teamwork is unrivaled." The leader of the group spoke up, raising the confidence of the other two. 𝐻𝐿gate only grinded his teeth in frustration. Deciding to give them one last chance, 𝐻𝐿gate began rising from his kneeling position and slightly turned his head to face them. "I said, leave." The three heroes suddenly felt a massive pressure wash over them as they truly began to grasp not only the height this man possessed but his bigger-than-life presence. Their minds went numb as a will not their own seemed to bear down on them, seemingly crushing their bodies within its grasps. Before the fear and panic even set it in, their legs were already making them run from where they came in hopes of escaping the monster that was conquering their minds with mere words. It's in this days that one of the heroes turns back at the giant in hopes of being able to warn his fellow heroes. All he saw was a vicious smirk right under a glorious white mustache. The hero didn't question if it was always there or if he imagined it, and simply turned back and continued to run alongside his hero teammates. 𝐻𝐿gate looked at them in confusion before deciding not to think too much about it and to get back to the warehouse. He needed to find a new location. Even though this fight took place far away from it, a competent hero or detective could still trace him back, which would endanger his family. He did not want All Might knocking on his door. Izuku wasn't sure if he was mentally prepared to meet his ex-father figure yet. He quickly began moving through the alleyways, making sure to stick to the ones not destroyed by 𝐀𝐮𝐭o𝐡𝐴𝐫's redirected beams. After about 10 minutes he arrived back at the warehouse with no food to his name but another son to the collection.